Hold on, I want to see if he gets unstuck or not. Hold on, I want to see if he gets out of there or not. Hey, you mean the Camaro with the deuce dizzles isn't really good in the snow? Who would have who would have guessed? Oh boy, yeah, we're back. We're back, baby. Oh boy. Oh shit. I know, right? It's not even Saturday. Who would have thought? It's just Friday night. Is he actually? Wow, he might actually have a chance. Hold on. All right. Struggle bus. Can't do it. He can't do it. Come on. Oh man. You make it? Oh, you made it, boys. Hey, He made it. Let's give him a. There we go. He made it. All right. Hold on. Okay, so my hat's all messed up. Oh well, whatever. Okay, we are so back right now. I don't know why my hat's all. Okay. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining in for a special edition of Woody Reviews, basically. I got word about this committee meeting. Just a little backtrack. I'm going to give a few minutes for everybody to catch in. Just a little bit of backstory on this whole thing. I found out about this committee meeting of like how wild it was last night. Totally 500 credit score for sure. And I got word of that it was crazy. So I waited for it to upload. And so this is the crazy part. They uploaded it and then I started to watch it and I went back to it and it was gone. It was totally missing. And then like a few minutes later, it was back. And I didn't watch all of it, but I watched some of it. And there's a lot of yelling. It's pretty cool. It's really funny with Andy yelling because he's like such a fragile looking guy. But I don't know. So hold on, let me get going. All right. So all of you probably know what happened like a week or two ago. But let's just do a little bit of recap. So how this whole thing got started is we got a bunch of snow, like, I don't know how long it was, a week or two ago. And the roads were all fucked up in Indy. I mean, they were terrible. I live right off of Rockville, basically like 2 or 3 days before you could even drive. Like, I have an all-wheel drive car, so it's easier for me. But when I did have a front-wheel drive car, it was a son of a bitch. And so we were supposed to have the council meeting on a Monday night. Well, Sunday, the day before, and Sunday, we got a bunch of snow. I ended up having to shovel my driveway twice that night. And so I'm on my way on Monday night to go to the city county meeting. And I'm thinking to myself, I better check to see if it was canceled. It got canceled. So I go and take Washington back. And the whole Washington is just totally fucked up. I mean, terrible. Like, this is a major road, so much of a major road that the state thought about buying it back because they sold it a long time ago for like $20 million or something. So obviously everybody's pissed off. I'm contacting people. I'm like, I just want to know how many snowplows there are. Do we even have enough? Do we have enough drivers? And then come to find out, there's this like 6-inch rule. Where is it? Shoddy Lauren Kostick, looks like she did a good job reporting everything. Oh yeah, there it is. Boom, right there. And so they changed the policy back in 2020 to this, and they were only going to do connected streets, right? So if you want to know what a connected street is, so everything in the red and everything in the blue is what's going to get plowed. If you're not, you are totally screwed. Like, look at all this area that's not going to get plowed. My street never got plowed because I'm not in the blue or the red area. And then when I went to downtown for the city county meeting, like the sidewalks that go onto the road, like off Pennsylvania or Washington, they were still full of snow. Like, you would have to walk over snow to get over there. It was pretty interesting. But, leave it to VOP. You got a chance to take a photo op. And VOP totally took advantage of it. I think he had them plow his driveway. That's what I think because VOP has a Tesla, if you didn't know that. I only know that because I've seen him at a couple of meetings and we would leave at the same time and I would see him leave. So funny enough, I mean, make sure you follow Indie Reporter too. This was clipped earlier from Lauren's thing, but this basically spells all of it.
Do you guys think this?
Hold on. Volume up. Oh, there we go. Okay, well, let me go back.
Do you guys think this was a successful snow response?
I am unbelievably grateful for that effort, and I'm proud of the work that they've done and that the city has done to keep our roads safe.
Do you guys?
Oh man, no, she did a good job reporting it, but I've said many times DPW is so messed up. The last 2 directors had 0 experience to do with anything with public works. Didn't even work a blue-collar job. Look at Mr. Him, Dan Parker, who's now the chief of staff, the chief deputy mayor. I mean, basically number 2. He might be running for mayor once Hogsett is done, or if Hogsett resigns. But I've looked at his LinkedIn. There is no experience in public works. He's never had a blue-collar job. Same thing with Brandon Hergy. In fact, he's left, and now there is no longer a DPW director. I'm going to keep an eye on Heritage Construction. I got a feeling that they're going to be getting a bunch of city contracts. I would not be surprised. All right, that's enough yapping from me. Let's just get into it. So what happened, they had two appointments, Dan Heck and Leslie Schlutt. Both don't know what they're talking about when it comes to burning garbage. So I'm just going to go straight into the DPW winter weather preparedness. And so what they're going to do is they're going to do a presentation. It's only going to be about 15 minutes. And then for the rest of the hour and a half, it's going to be yelling, pointing fingers. How dare you, you son of a bitch. Slapping it. Andy Nielsen throws a tantrum. We get the gaslighting from the DPW officials. Oh my God. Let's just get into it.
Next up on our agenda, we have heard from our constituents the need to discuss the snow fight, the recent snow fight. So this evening, we are going to hear a presentation from our interim director, and our deputy director of policy and planning. After the presentation, we will take questions from our colleagues. And I thank you so much for allowing them to come before us and engage in this conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie and Sam. Thank you very much for being here.
And just a quick checkup too. Zach Adamson used to be the chair of the Public Works Committee until ketamine cowboy Jesse Brown beat him in the primary. But now I think Zach is just now a liaison for DPW. Dottie.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. My name's Sam Barris. I'm the interim director of the Department of Public Works. I'm also the department's chief financial officer. Up here with me tonight is Natalie Van Dongen, as you referenced. She is our deputy director of policy and planning. As you mentioned, we're here tonight because the department has received questions from councilors and members of the public about our snow fight procedures, and specifically as they pertain to
Are you kidding
the
me?
snowstorm basically covering the last couple weeks. We have a presentation here for you tonight that we hope will address many of the questions that you've asked or will ask, and we're excited to have this conversation. Before we begin with our prepared remarks and the presentation that you should have available to you in front of you, I want to just take a second to acknowledge some of the folks in the room behind me. That includes both DPW's operations management as well as folks from AFSCME Local 725. And so I think as members of this committee, you'll understand that these folks are the backbone of DPW's snow fight operation. I mean, we've been talking about what was essentially a continuous 24/7 operation over a matter of a couple weeks. People working 12-hour shifts back, day after day after day. And so before we begin with this, I just want to take a moment and thank those people for all the work and sacrifices that they've made over the last couple weeks. So if possible, I'd like to have everybody here that was involved in our snow fight operation just stand up for a second so we can thank you, and council can as well.
A standing ovation for doing your job is pretty unbelievable, I'm not going to lie. Lowering the bar.
Thank you. And with that, I would like to ask
100%,
Steve, President of AFSCME Local 725, to come up and make some brief remarks, if it pleases the chair, for him to do so.
Oh, that's right.
Good evening.
All right.
Appreciate this
Pay attention. Pay attention. I did catch this part. I didn't watch all of it, but I did catch this part.
opportunity. What I want to do is a couple things for the citizens to know and all the counselors. We got new counselors and we got folks that look outside the window and they make judgments on what should have been done, how it should have been done, this or that. You actually have
He's calling all of you the quarterback or couch quarterback on the couch, whatever it is.
to participate, ride in the trucks, and I asked some of the counselors back in the day to do that so you can really respond to your constituents with some facts and not feelings. I just want people to know that the employees have been working since January the 1st, 12 hours. They working this week. We getting prepared for the weekend. And like our director said, I would really like to thank them. They're away from their family. You got to remember that. They live here just like everybody else. And we ride the same roads and things that everybody else do. And solid waste, streets, snow, and potholes, same folks. And you know what's in the news is here, and people want to talk and probably be seen or whatever, but I'm telling you, the same folks that's plowing snow that ain't got out of the truck yet is the same one when I hear on the news about the potholes that's out there. What we gonna do about that? Can't be in two places at once. That's number one. Number two, we don't get hot mix until later. Sometimes we work with the company and get it sooner.
He's right. Usually hot mix doesn't show up until like March or April. So all those potholes that you see in Indy, they're not getting filled for the next few months.
And when you put the temporary mix in there, it don't really last long anyway. So I got to make that statement, then I got an ask. If you get an opportunity, all you guys, ride with the workers, work with the workers, see what they do. So when your constituents ask you, why ain't we doing side streets? Well, once you take a truck through a side street, we can't fit it no way with an 11-foot plow, but it turns into ice. Now it's real hazard. You can't even stop, right? So if you roll with the folks, you would know that. You might not even know that when they're out there, the first thing that freezes up is your windshield wipers. Can't even see out of it. And some people think that when you go and you plow snow, that the same salt stay on the same truck for the whole 12 hours. No, you go way out the county line, then you got to come all the way back and get refilled up. Fuel and all, whatever. The other ask that I ask is, we all partners. We partners with the management here and with the union to make it, we meet regular to decide what to do, how to do, and everybody can be a quarterback after the game is played. That's too late.
Yeah, just
what
said
I'm
that.
asking for you, all you guys, be a partner with us.
Oh,
Instead
armchair quarterback.
of, I don't want bashing and all the other stuff. If your constituents got questions, let's think about what we can do collectively as partners to take care of them. So if we did something that you don't understand or they don't understand that we can do better, I'd rather see that than this news up here and folks start doing pot shots, because words matter. And I don't want the morale of the people that bust their butt on a regular basis, management and union, to leave out of here today or see on the news that we don't have you guys to support. So I'm asking that. And I'll work with you guys like we always do. If somebody's not real clear, they welcome to ride as well too. But they busting their butt, they still on the clock. This weekend, folks, is Martin Luther King. Folks are going to do what they do. Our guys will be in the trucks to make sure the city is safe. That's all I ask. And thank you.
That's very fascinating. All right, for those of you who have never worked a snowplow before, it's not that big of a deal. When I lived in Michigan, I worked at a place that, and I had to basically get like this. It was like a '90s Ford F-350. And I had to get it ready to become a plow truck. They're sitting in a truck for basically 12 hours plowing snow. They're not really doing it manually. They're just in there getting their big gulp, getting their chew, getting their yins, and hey, just hanging on there. Everybody praise me. Not that big of a deal.
Thank you, Steve, for those remarks, and once again, just can't reiterate enough how humbled and impressed and thankful I am for the sacrifices that our crews and our management team has made over those last couple weeks. It's really remarkable when you think about how the amount of effort and commitment that it takes to keep these roads safe, especially over such a long weather event. Before we get into our presentation, I just want to also thank another group of people, which is counselors, specifically members of this committee. Over the years, the investments that you've made in DPW's budget, in our staff, in our equipment, in our facilities, that is what has allowed us to stay prepared for inclement weather and other conditions and other situations. And without going through all of those investments, even just this past end of year fiscal, the fiscal you supported included funding specifically to help our crews during the snow fight, as well as investments in our operations facilities. These are the places where both management and our union crews work out of. And, you know, in a snow fight like this, they're essentially living out of them. So I really appreciate those commitments, and I look forward to future conversations about what more we can do to invest in DPW and our workforce. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie and our presentation.
Well, good evening, counselors. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come and present regarding our snow policy and our snow fight response tonight. So we understand that you and your constituents have a lot of questions as it pertains to our plowing policies and procedures, and we thought it best to come tonight and give the full background of that plowing policy and how we kind of got to where we are today. So prior to 2020, the City of Indianapolis Department of Public Works utilized what we called the 6-inch rule, or the 6-inch policy, as it pertained to plowing roadways during a winter weather event. And what that essentially meant was during a snow event, accumulation had to meet or exceed 6 inches prior to a contractor call out that would then address secondary roads, connector roads, and residential roads.
I want to know something now. And I'm sure somebody will ask, is like, does it have to be half a foot? Can it be like 5 inches? Like, what's really the threshold of where you're saying, all right, we're only going to deploy this amount of people because it's only this thick?
So DPW operations utilized accumulation measurements from the National Weather Service, and to determine when that 6-inch threshold had been met or exceeded. Without 6 inches of accumulation, DPW was only equipped to address the roads on DPW plow routes and did not call out contractors. Most weather events did not reach that 6-inch accumulation threshold, which meant we were not calling out contractors during those events to do secondary roads, connector roads, or residential routes. So why did we decide to ultimately change this policy? There were a number of factors that contributed to this policy change. First and foremost, DPW Snow Forest leadership had found that conditions had not warranted utilization of this 6-inch policy or met that 6-inch threshold in the span of 5 years prior to that policy change. Accumulation throughout the county also varies during a single snow event or a single winter weather event. So we can have an area of the city that receives more snowfall and therefore more accumulation, or due to wind patterns and varying temperatures, receives or witnesses more accumulation than other areas of the city. Now, we're utilizing the data provided to us by the National Weather Service, so that is not necessarily a real-time accumulation measurement of everywhere in the county that could have been hit by accumulation. Additionally, this policy did not take into account consideration of the many contributing factors of when it comes to addressing winter weather, such as projected conditions. So not only what we are seeing right now on the ground, but rather what we expect to see in the coming hours, days, and potentially weeks of a winter weather event. So that brings us to our current policy, which we are calling our connector policy. So the 6-inch policy was eliminated in 2020 and replaced with a policy that included residential connector roads on our plow routes. So these, inclusion of these new connector roads accounts for about 300 centerline miles of residential connector streets that our DPW plows are able to address or contractors are able to address. So these connector roadways during this most recent winter weather snow fight were addressed by DPW crews beginning on Tuesday, January 7th, one day after the snow had stopped falling. DPW leadership can also utilize this policy to assess in real time the specific conditions of a winter weather event rather than having to wait for that 6 inches of accumulation. So the decision on whether or not to call out contractors to address residential streets is based on a holistic approach to a snow fight, which includes consideration of projected conditions, the conditions that we're seeing, so that can mean temperatures and kind of snowfall or kind of precipitation. And just to...
Hold up, Shoddy. Whenever somebody says that they're going to take a holistic approach, it's already bad news. I've heard Chief Chris Bailey talk about, oh, we're going to take a holistic approach. What the fuck does that even mean? Some natural approach? Okay. And how's that worked out so far, huh?
To throw this out there, contractors have been called out one time in the last 10 years, and it was in 2021 after the policy had changed. We have also heard concerns about the department's communication regarding this policy change, so I did want to address that head on. At the time of this policy change, the department did put out a press release, which you'll see in the middle there, on November 6, 2020. This was then covered by some local media, including WTHR and the Indy Star. And on December 10th, the then Director of the Department of Public Works, Dan Parker, did present to the Public Works Committee during the year-end report about this policy change.
You think anybody's paying attention to that kind of stuff? I'm being for real on this whole thing. Do you think anybody's like, oh, by the way, we're changing our procedure on plowing snow? All people care about is the road clear. That's all they give a shit about.
Anytime we're doing any sort of winter weather advisory, sending out a release, doing any sort of press prior to snowfall, we always encourage residents, counselors, mayor's neighborhood advocates to share the indy.gov/snow URL. Everything that is contained here is also on that website. So in our FAQs, you will find our plowing policy that has been there since this change in 2020. Additionally, at the time,
what's happened? That's not me. That's not me. Yeah, see, it's not me. They're doing it again. They're doing it again. They're banning me. Hold on. Hold on.
policy. Okay. And of course, we prioritize as well communicating during a snow fight. So over the course of this month and this snow fight, we participated in a coordinated press conference regarding this upcoming winter weather on the Saturday before the snow started. We reached over 80,000 users on Facebook and Instagram, and I really cannot shout out our communications team enough. They worked round the clock to ensure that we were getting updated information on our social media channels, out to press. As much communication as we could, we really did. So
I really am.
That included updating
am.
social media channels with plowing status and trash service changes. We shared the forecast as projected by the National Weather Service. We maintained availability for local media throughout the course of the snow fight, and we did post a reminder regarding the connector policy. And with that, I will kick it back over to Interim Director Barris.
Thank you, Natalie.
Hold on. That's a good point, Steve. Yes, probably. About the retainers. How much are retainers though? And they probably use multiple contractors, right? Like a lot of the people that do the grass cutting, they do snow plowing during the winter.
So Natalie walked
Hey,
through
Beyond Formal.
how our snow fight policy has changed over time, and specifically that change about half a decade ago. I just want to talk about some of the steps, first of all, that DPW takes outside of the winter weather season. I think the clear point here is winter weather preparedness is a year-round preoccupation for the department. So this includes annual mock snow fight exercises, which specifically involve training extensively on our plow map. So this is our routes that we have prepared to plow in line with the connector policy that Natalie just addressed. People are trained on those routes, which is one of the reasons why in the middle of a snow fight, if you're talking about making significant changes to the way you're approaching those routes, you have to factor in that people have been trained to do a specific thing, and they've been trained on it hard throughout the year. An additional thing that the department's been working through is making technology investments to help our snow fight be smarter, and so that includes Samsara technology, which has capability to help us optimize our routes, make them more efficient, make plows be able to cover more ground during a snow fight. And then we talk about fleet a little bit more a couple slides down, but I just want to highlight Fleet Services isn't just working on our snow trucks during a snow fight. They're working on them around
not that
the
much,
clock,
really.
Throughout the year, trying to get as many trucks.
So $1,000 to $1,500 for a city that has a $1.6 billion budget. That's
working
crazy.
Condition as possible. And so sometimes this includes keeping older trucks on our inventory and trying to find that specific part that will make it roadworthy. It means doing everything we can to maximize our resources to make sure we're prepared. Additionally, we've made investments in our workforce. I think members of this body, in particular from past budget conversations, are familiar with our CDL training program, which now has successfully included 66 employees since it was started in 2022. And
for a little backstory on that CDL program. Basically, they'll pay people to get their CDL license, and the city will anyway, and then they can just leave. There's no like consequence. There's no contract that they have to sign. It's like, hey, we got this. Now you got to be here for a year, basically, to pay it off. They could just take off with the taxpayer-funded CDL.
And then finally, but very importantly, I think you'll all remember from the budget conversation that one of the biggest priorities that the 2025 operating budget funds is a new collective bargaining agreement for our union employees. This is a historic investment in our workforce, and that's not just something we do to do the right thing. It's also pivotal to our recruitment and retention efforts. Again, for the folks that are operating these pieces of equipment, and not just operating the pieces of equipment, but also
they're getting
working
overtime.
fleet services, mechanics. You know, this includes historic pay raises for those folks as well. All of those things make DPW's snow fight operation better, and so those are things that happen obviously outside, disconnected from the winter weather season, but are still very important. This slide includes some of the outputs, and we report on this stuff from time to time. You might have seen it reported in local media. I think the thing I just want to highlight is you can see the dates on here. This was a 12-day all-in snow fight. With very few exceptions, our crews were out 24/7. These are people working 12-hour shifts, dropping salt, working our equipment. You can see the overtime hours reported there. Why is there so much overtime? Though? Again, these are 12-hour shifts that people have to work in order to cover a 24-hour period. With the personnel we have, we're extremely proud of them, and we couldn't do it without their effort and their sacrifices. We've received questions specifically on our snow fleet. We've gotten various iterations of this question about how many trucks we have available.
That's what I wanted to know.
We've tried to answer those in real time throughout the snow fight as best we could, but wanted to put some of the facts up here for you tonight. DPW operations needs about 70 snow trucks in order to be able to go out there and plow their routes in line with the plan that I've talked about that people have been trained on all year. So we had just over that number, fortunately, thanks to the work of Fleet Services going into, again, this big snow fight. And I want to remind people, this isn't the first time it snowed all year. We might forget there were other weather events that involved snow fight responses previously. And regardless of how much it snows, you're usually talking about operating heavy pieces of equipment 24/7. You know, you drive a car to Florida, you're driving it for 16, 17 hours. If you're driving one of our snow trucks on a, round the clock, you're driving it 24 hours a day. That's hard on equipment. So in line with that, Fleet Services is a 24/7 operation during a snow fight too. They're working with they're road service mechanics. They're people in our fleet service shops. They have these trucks out at vendors if necessary. So we're working with private vendors if we need to get these trucks back on the road as quickly as possible. So when you ask questions about how many trucks we have at a certain point,
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
That number's going down as trucks are
how is plowing
obvious
snow a
tear.
sacrifice?
They're operating in tough conditions, again, 24/7.
Dude, you're in your truck all day, though. You're not out there, like, shoveling snow. You're not on, like, Washington out there with a fucking shovel, man. I get, like, oh, I'm not with my family, but the sacrifice is I get paid a lot of money then. I mean, that's really what it is, right?
And Fleet Services working to get them back on the road as quickly as they can by whatever means necessary. So the count is going up and down throughout a snow fight.
Have any plows? Okay.
We've also gotten a lot of questions on contractors, and obviously Natalie touched on this with kind of the premise of the policy change back in 2020 and the move from the 6-inch rule to the connector policy. So again, just to reiterate what she's saying, we're evaluating a number of conditions in this decision, and it's not an easy decision. It's one that requires daily discussion. So it's not like we get together one time, try to figure out what to do in a specific snow fight. We're meeting daily, having discussions about conditions, soliciting feedback from emergency response agencies, whether their vehicles are able to respond to emergencies throughout the county. We're looking at weather forecasts, how temperatures are supposed to fluctuate, wind conditions.
Hold on, someone check my math. Someone check my math, all right? Am I dumb? Just double check. 12 hours of audiobooks is torture, I know. All right, so Marion County is 2,400 square miles, right? So if you were to take, and you have 70 drivers, so each driver could do 34 square miles, 34.28 square miles, which is what, it basically like 8 miles times 4 miles. So you could do like a decent section. Like, how are the roads not clear then? If that's the case, if you have 70 trucks and you're just saying all of us are going to spread out, we're going to grid it up, and we're all going to take care of this. At least get rid of, at least take care of the main roads so we can have commerce. Is my math on that, or am I just dumb? I mean, there's a good chance that I am dumb, but
Future snowfall. In this case, we were dealing with 8 inches of snow, and then very cold weather, and then an additional almost 4 inches of snow that fell later in the week. So all of these things are factoring in to our decision-making process about whether to call out contractors, not just total snow accumulation. And I want to make another point. In terms of calling out contractors, there are important trade-offs that people need to remember. Yes, the cost of a full call-out to plow every residential street in the county would be extremely high. That is a fact, plain and simple. But I want to be crystal clear about this. Our decision to not call out contractors during the snow fight was not a budgetary decision. If we have thought it was necessary for public safety and the condition of the roads, we would have done so, full stop, regardless of the cost. And I think it's important for you as members of this committee, members of the public, members of the media to understand that if conditions had warranted it, and if the feedback we were receiving from a public safety standpoint had necessitated to it, we would have done this, period. So, what other considerations other than cost are there for the decision to call out contractors? One, as I talked about, you have weather conditions. So, you have snow falling, you have people driving on that top layer of snow, potentially for days. Is plowing that top layer of snow off going to make conditions better, or is it going to make them more icy? That depends on a variety of factors and what the forecast for the upcoming days is. Additionally, as you know, as residents here, we have some pretty narrow streets. When we send private plows up and down these streets,
is that what it is?
Is it really? They're not going to remove the snow from the
issue?
streets.
Is it complex though?
So where is it going to get pushed? In almost every case, it's going to get pushed to the side of the street, up against people's vehicles, in front of people's driveways, onto sidewalks potentially that have already been shoveled by residents. So I want to be clear that there's no place to put the snow. If we're plowing narrow residential streets, we're going to create conditions that certain people aren't going to like through that action. Additionally, because we have so many tight, narrow streets, oftentimes, like on the street I live in, you have cars parked on both sides of the street. As we know from experience, back in 2021, when we did the only private contract call-out in the last decade, we would get a high volume of complaints about property damage to people's vehicles, people's mailboxes, other property, and that is an important factor too. So there are trade-offs associated with doing this.
Of that.
And in addition, you have to consider that there's not one uniform snow plowing contractor in the city. Most of these entities that we're talking about are smaller companies that are in other lines of work, that have trucks that can be equipped with plows. They have drivers with various levels of training, and most importantly, the equipment they have varies wildly from contractor to contractor.
Dude, so true.
In some cases,
D2 Indy, so true.
We might have private contractors that are equipped to send out pretty good vehicles that can drop salt and do stuff like that. In other cases, that's not what you're getting. I mean, you would see wide variation in how our roads are treated throughout the county if you did this.
Don't worry, it's almost over.
In terms of how long it took to get to certain roads, in terms of what condition the roads were when they left. Depending on the contractor, you could see very responsible, professional driving and behavior. In other cases, maybe not so much. So my point isn't that it's never the right answer to call out private contractors. In some cases, it might be, but it's not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet to conditions that you see out there on the road.
They're just
and it
yapping
other
now.
Problems that will create, that members of the public will not like either. And so we have to consider all these things before we make a decision like that, not just cost, but all of the other ramifications of calling out contractors.
So basically is they don't have a definitive plan of when to call out contractors. Listen, we have all these different things. This is like going for it on fourth down every time, basically, right? We're an analytics guy, man. We really have to look at it. We have to check money, which we're probably good on. Is contractors even a good idea? What's the most efficient thing that we can do? And how can we make sure we don't hurt anybody's feelings? Oh, boy. This is what happens when, you know what? At what time is it? 8:35. I nominate myself to become DPW director of Indianapolis. Somebody send in my resume. You know, actually, this is my resume right now. This video right now is the resume. I'm calling everybody out that you need leadership. The mission is to take care of the roads, all right? And you are not accomplishing that mission.
That's our last slide. I just wanted to quickly shout out our operations team. It's not a slide in here. They were able to utilize equipment we have, resources we have to hit some of our most used trails networks, and they started doing so within a day of snow stopping to fall. I'm very proud of them and impressed with the speed in which they reacted to those trail systems. Obviously,
the roads are still messed up, bro.
The priority after a snowfall is getting the major thoroughfares plowed, the streets people use the most.
Yeah.
But of course, we want to do what we can to address other forms of transportation, people that might be relying on those trail systems to get to work. So,
oh my God.
Just wanted to note that and give them a shout out as well. So, with
hey,
that,
you know, I was really happy everybody could ride their bike on the Monon Trail. You know, we knew how much you really needed that, right?
that's the end of our presentation. We understand there may be questions. We're happy to answer those questions.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it. We will take questions right now. Chairman Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me just start by thanking those in the audience that were out there on those streets and roads and doing the job that need to get done. And then secondly, let me say, I don't appreciate what I feel is some sort of context that us questioning how things have happened and answering on behalf of our constituents, that somehow we're attacking the people that were working, because that is not the case at all. Nobody here is saying that the folks that were on the road, who were also, in some cases, in their own safety issues, were having issues, that we have a problem with them. That's not it. There's legit questions to be asked, and there's answers to be had, and how we can make this better the next go around. Because in 10 years, this is the worst I've seen it. And having grown up in this city, I think it's the worst that I've seen it.
Actually from Arizona, all right? So I'm not sure how entirely true that is.
As well. There was so much about what you said that I'm like almost discombobulated, and where I want to focus in on.
A lot of yapping.
I want it to be clear that I've never had an issue in 10 years like I have with this, that my constituents called me, texted me, emailed me. They were angry, they were scared, they were upset. And then when I look at the contractor call out, when I look at some of these things that go into that consideration, icy conditions. I think in one of the press releases we put that we were hoping that it would warm up and it would melt the snow. Well, we're in a freeze-thaw situation, so eventually that would have became icy conditions as well, and I'm not buying that one.
No.
Snow.
Hey, were the people that called you or emailed you, were they happy with their voting decision? That's all I want to know, because you know what? We had an election like 2 years ago, voting for you, voting for Hogsett, voting for everybody at that table right now. Hey, everybody. And you know, how's voting Democrat working out for you? And all of you out there in Hamilton County, Boone County, Hendricks, Johnson, wherever, whatever red county that you're in, guess what? The more you vote Democrat, the more chance of this is going to happen to you. All right? So if you want to keep voting Democrat, guess what? Your roads are going to be shit, and you're going to be stuck in your house for a couple of days.
Pushed onto vehicles and sidewalks. Have you been walking our sidewalks outside the downtown core?
Oh, they're
covered.
Well,
you
yeah.
can't walk on them.
To be fair, that is kind of the homeowner's job.
And they didn't get plowed. Residents, the streets being narrow, property damage, so on. How much overtime are we spending for our waste crews? They can't get down the streets, right? In some cases, people have not gotten their garbage picked up in over a week, 2 weeks.
Someone pick up
So
my
I'm not
poo.
asking for an answer because I don't think you're going to give me anything I want to hear. I'm just expressing myself and the constituents that have contacted me. They want to know they're represented, and we are not okay with this.
Can President quick answer?
I really want to finish first, real quick, and then he can take the mic. But we've had a process and a way that we have done things for years. Suddenly, we've changed things, and people are angry. So at what point, this will be a question for you, at what point, why was there no consideration to go out and get those contractors for the residential streets?
Hey, man, didn't you hear? We have to take a holistic approach, bro. We got a lot of factors to figure out.
When you heard the cries from people, every news agency in the city reported on it. Counselors were getting it. We were forwarding it to our chairs, to you. I mean, what's the threshold? Is it 12 inches? And then when I hear about the policy change, you could have easily changed the policy for connector streets without touching the 6-inch rule. You didn't have to move on the 6-inch rule. You could have just said, we're going to do connector streets at 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, and then moved on the 6 inches of snow. I understand that it hasn't been used that much, and in some ways it's a good thing, right? So, but I don't understand removing this threshold where we don't go out and do residential streets at all. Other cities have far worse conditions than us, and they're out there plowing the residential streets.
Oh, wait a minute. Hey, are those same people, are those same cities run by Democrats, or?
And we're sitting here acting like we don't know how to do it? Not buying it.
Man.
That's my remarks.
Steve, quick. I just want to be clear. My comments ain't attacking anybody. We on TV for the citizens that maybe not know how things work and why it happens. So I ain't saying nobody.
Does he not look like Curtis Hill?
Doing that. I just want the people to know they bust their ass. They've been working since last Saturday. They'll be working all this week, and they done the best you can do. Period. And folks just need to
Holy
understand.
shit. Hold on. Wait. Okay, hold on. Look at this picture. All right. Does that not look like Curtis Hill? Right? Right, Curtis Hill. No, what a fall from grace. No.
And understand the frustration, and you remember what I asked. What
That's
you all
right.
have to do
D2
is
Indy.
actually come out, ride with these guys and girls that do the work every day, and you can probably answer some of your own questions that you have. That's all I'm saying. What I did want to happen is for us to, like now, be here on television like someone intentionally or unintentionally could have done better. They done great with what they had to work with. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying you can ask any question you want, but we need to respect the people, I think, that's here, away from their family, that live here, and they busting their butt to do the work.
You know what's weird? Why are they not with their family right now? Why are they going to be sitting in a 2-hour city council meeting?
And what I asked is, if we can, let's figure out what you just said, how we can work together. If we can do something different, you ain't gonna make everybody happy no matter what you do, but what we can do to work together. What I don't want to do, because I think it divides the community as a whole. If we get in here tit-tatting back and forth with each other, then you're gonna have folks that agree with you, and you're gonna have folks that agree with the folks that do the work, and then we divide it. I just like to, if we can, I ain't directing nobody anything, how we can kind of communicate, see the questions you got, what we can do better, if we can do better, and let's try to do that. That's what I want. I got my guy, I asked him to be here. I wanted them to see that they got the support of the city county council, that you guys understand, and girls, how they busting their butt every day, they're away from their families, and all. That's it. But I ain't attacking nobody. I ain't saying nobody's blaming any of those guys. Even if it's intentional, unintentional, if you say the performance is not what it's supposed to be, and these are the people that's doing the performance, that's what they're gonna believe. So that's all I'm asking. You know what I mean? So just
be nice to me. That's what he's saying.
Do what you want. What I ask, ride with us, get with us, see what it takes, see what it is.
The Academy Cowboy.
And I think you
he makes an appearance for sure.
Because you have actual data on how things will work. But these guys, I mean, they get tired and they're working. That's all I'm saying. And what I ask,
we got it.
And I'm done.
We get it.
I know when the TVs and cameras on, everybody do their thing and you do what you do, but don't do it on the back of the people that's doing the work. They here. And they'll be back. They was here last night, worked all night last night. They'll get a break tomorrow. They'll be back out Saturday and Saturday night. So I just want you to understand that's it. That's all.
No one's mad at the workers, man. They're mad at DPW. Take a chill, Bill. Curtis, go and chill out, all right, Curdy?
All I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, President Quick, and I appreciate those comments, and I just want to reiterate, for me personally, I think you've heard me, a lot of this is about the contractors. And then if there are issues with needing additional resources and crews, well, we have to know that.
So.
I think one of the news agencies reported something about Columbus, who has half the lane miles that they're plowing that we do, and they have, I don't know, 50, 60 more trucks and drivers. So that's a resource thing. That's not on the folks that are out there doing the jobs and doing the work. And I just have to reiterate that. So, and it's hard to even look at you guys, because I know you're not the ones who've necessarily put us in this situation.
I'll let them finish.
But you are the heads of it right now, and we have to express what is coming through to us from our constituents. So I just wanted to reiterate that part about our workers and appreciation of them. They might need more that we don't even know. Maybe they want to have 50 more drivers out there doing it too.
Waste more taxpayer dollars. You know, Josh Bain had a proposal that would give more money to DPW. It would basically take money away from needless departments like sustainability or the DEI department. And guess who voted no for it? Every single Democrat.
Councilor Nelson.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you,
Here we go,
Chairwoman.
boys. This is the highlight. This is the highlight.
And I want to put even,
I'm going to sit
I
back.
appreciate what Chairman Evans has said, and even a finer point, and express frustration that this presentation was meant to mesh the hard work of ASME and contractors. That's what you all did. You all tried to create this environment that we are somehow against hardworking union labor, and you said it when you talked about the union contract. And like, I don't know who's watching, but that's unacceptable. Because our folks out there, thank you. Thank you. You are doing it. And so, with the chairwoman's permission, I have a number of questions, and we're going to get into it. So first off, and maybe this is for the interim
Yeah, they are
director,
paid to be there.
So who was it the administration or was it the Department of Public Works that changed the policy?
When we say the policy,
Yes, the
we're talking about
2020
the
policy change. Who made it? Was who generated the policy change, and who was approved by?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit, although I wasn't at the department or with the city at the time.
Okay.
But I'm happy to speak to the history as I understand it,
Mm-hmm.
which is that as Deputy Director Van Dongen articulated, the policy at the time was not something that was viewed as a great.
The question
savior.
was, Mr. Interim Director, who made the decision and who signed off on
The
it?
decision would have been made by the department's leadership as well as the administration.
So the
as a
mayor
whole.
signed off on it, yes or no?
And Dan Parker.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is a DPW policy.
Okay.
It was initiated by the Department of Public Works.
So it was happened internally, initiated by the Public Works, and the administration would have to sign off on it, correct?
I would have to fact check the administration sign off. That being said, it's a procedural policy that dictates how our DPW crews address snow fight.
Correct. And so during that time, there would have been a DPW director who happens now to be the chief deputy mayor of the city. So it would have been intimately involved in that. Yes or no?
Sure.
Cook, thank you. So what's the preferred policy? What if I could give you $100 million, $200 million, $300 million? What's the preferred policy? Tell us right now.
Tell me now.
It's a hard hypothetical to entertain.
Well, you said it wasn't a budgetary issue, and so here's where we're going to get budgetary, because you're a CFO, is that we have AFSCME who's busting their tail 12 hours a day, continuously, and they're out there doing it. And somehow Washington Street, main state highway that we maintain that goes through the southern part of my district, that is able to stay clear, dry, and safe. So when you say it's not a budgetary issue, what am I supposed to say to folks who live on the far east side of my district, and they say, I can't get to a doctor's appointment, I can't pick up medicine? What am I supposed to say to them? You say it's not a budgetary issue, so if I gave you $100 million, I get that. But this is serious, because I've had people who are frustrated, sir. Okay, and I believe I have the floor.
I have the floor. I'm totally clipping that, by the way.
I'm asking, you say it's not a budgetary issue, but if you could put more salt than there is on this earth on the ground, what would it cost? That's the issue. And you've tried to bifurcate that into something that it's not. And that's really inappropriate and is intellectually dishonest because both of you are smarter than that. So my question is,
that point, I do want to speak to our AFSCME crews are utilized during the DPW snow response, and we are here today to talk about the DPW snow
no,
response.
you're not. You are here to talk
That is
about
what
you
we were
manage
asked.
contracts with contractors that are responsible for keeping our residents safe.
Excuse me, I did ask them to come here to give a presentation on the last 2 weeks.
So I apologize, Chairwoman Jones.
The presentation.
Whoopsie.
The cry from our constituents was the winter preparedness on the snow fight and the questions and the advocacy that you all were doing in your districts. And I felt that we had a lot of questions. And so I asked the interim director and deputy director of policy and planning to come before us to give a presentation. And so that all the questions that you all were getting, the emails, the texts, the calls, so that you would have the opportunity to ask them those questions about what has transpired in the last snow fight. So I would like to keep that germane to this presentation, please.
Madam Chair,
That's what they were preparing for.
and Madam Chair, I have different level of respect for you. And I would say that the management of contracts that are related to that snow fight are incredibly germane to this.
We completely agree, and that is why it has been addressed in this presentation when we're happy to speak to it. I do not want it to come across as we are trying to conflate those two issues. DPW crews and our AFSCME union workers are an integral part to our snow operation, and when it comes to DPW plows, those are AFSCME crews. So we can speak to the contractor questions, but when we are speaking to the DPW snow response, we are intrinsically talking about our crews and our DPW plow routes.
I don't think that makes any sense, so I'm going to yield. I'm done talking.
By the way, hey, you think it's bad. This is a very common, this is going to be the common theme for this entire committee meeting, are those kinds of answers from DPW officials.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jones.
I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it.
And I do want to just shout out with my compliments to the DPW employees and the AFSCME members. We do appreciate the hard work and the efforts. It's not easy. I've ridden in the solid waste trucks, and it's a tough job. And we truly, truly appreciate that work. But I still also have some concerns, and in the spirit of partnership, I'm going to offer some constructive criticism that I hope will improve the situation. So that's the spirit in which I'm going to talk. But I'm also going to go through these slides and point out some serious issues that I have. Let's go to slide 3, please.
Slide 3.
Just the reasons of changing the policy, and maybe following Councilor Nielsen's thought process here, I truly fail. Why did I change our policy is what I show as 3. Am I off?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, great.
There we go.
The ones I got didn't have numbers on them, so I just numbered them myself. I really fail to see the logic in any of these reasons. The fact that no one's done this in 5 years is not a reason. That's just a fact. It's like no one on this floor has had a heart attack, so we don't need the AEDs. Or this city hasn't had a fire, so let's eliminate the fire department. That's not a reason, that's a fact. Secondly, the second reason is similarly not in my opinion, a valid reason. It's an issue, yes. The north side might get 6 inches, the south side might get 4 inches.
I completely agree,
We got
Steve.
a big county. That's not a reason to ignore the obligation.
That was literally the same thing I thought of. It's like, why else would they, or they got rid of the contractors because they needed that money for the new contract for the asthma or whatever it is, their union contract? Because I think they just renewed this year.
3,
maybe
does
that was
the
part of it.
new policy take into considerations the many factors that you cite as a basis for eliminating the old policy?
So I'm happy to give an answer, and Natalie, please.
Where's Dan Parker at?
If I miss anything.
He was the director when this whole thing happened.
The rationale, as Deputy Director Van Dongen just walked through, is pretty simple in effect, which is setting a threshold, whatever the threshold is by which you're measuring snow, and saying if it's above X inches of snow, then roads warrant a contractor call out, and if it's below it, it does not warrant a contractor call out, is a fairly arbitrary way to make a big decision that's going to affect public safety, cost taxpayer dollars, et cetera. And so I understand and appreciate, counselor interest in what the right policy should be. In terms of why the 6-inch policy was seen as ineffective, it's just pretty simple that, just measuring the snowfall and saying this is road conditions that warrant a contractor call out was seen at the time and now by us as an inferior method to holistically looking at conditions, relying on decades of experience of people that have been fighting snow in central Indiana, communicating with emergency response agencies, and making an informed decision based on a variety of factors. So,
just yapping. This is what they do. This guy from Office Space right here is just like playing out word salad and just trying to get everybody distracted. Just one big yappy answer.
I think you asked a second question. Could I have you repeat that?
Sure. Just the issues, the contributing factors that were not taken into consideration for the first policy. Does the new policy accept all these contributing factors that you cite here?
The new policy gives the department and the administration's leadership discretion to trust expertise and feedback from, again, our partners in the emergency response agencies to make decisions about how to respond to a snowstorm. So it addresses it in the sense that if it snows 5 inches and there's a huge amount of blowing wind and conditions lend themselves to utilizing private contractors to supplement our snow fight efforts, we can do that, whereas before we wouldn't have been able to. And likewise, if conditions are such that it snows 7 inches and we deem, based off of the feedback and internal discussions we have, that contractors are not the right approach, we don't have to do it. So it is simply allowing the department to make more informed decisions based on things other than measured snow accumulation.
Oh my God. This is so fucking dumb. You could literally just go outside and be like, hey, you know what? It's probably time to, what's our snow going to be like for the next couple of days? Okay, maybe we should start getting ahead of it so people can get into work and have commerce.
I'll accept that, thank you. I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions and then yield my time because I don't want to monopolize. Because as many of us, I have a sheet of questions. If we may go to the next slide. And I just want to clarify, and this is just a personal incident or a situation for District 3. One of the major connectors in my area was never touched. So the connector policy that you have was not put into play. Secondly, it was cited to us that because of the snow, we can't pick up trash. That's an oxymoron. You can't pick up trash because the snow's not plowed. So the trash cans on my street, 7 days, still sitting there, untouched.
Same.
So that's just symbolic of there's either it's the implementation of the policy, something's going wrong.
It's symbolic, all right. It's symbolic of how the city is run by this garbage administration.
And recycling, same thing. I've got complaints, entire streets, nothing touched. Nobody from Republic or anybody offering any hardly legitimate explanations. So that's some concern there.
Councilor Boots, if I just may respond very briefly.
Sure.
In terms of the specific connector roadways that you mentioned, I would love if you could provide us, and we can help after the fact look into whether they truly weren't hit. If something is marked as a connector roadway on our snow fight plow maps, it should have been hit. We completed a pass of the connector roads by the end of Wednesday after the major snowfall. So if there were segments that were not hit, we want to look into it, and we want your feedback. So please send that over, and we'll personally check it out.
Well, I had sent it over previously, and that's how I confirmed. I was told by your department, no, sorry, we don't know what happened. We didn't hit that. And by now, it's been plowed by the neighborhood who paid money for a contractor to come out and do it. So it doesn't need it now.
Understood. I understand that it doesn't need it now. Obviously, I don't want to sit here and tell you every single aspect of every single thing we've done is perfect. That's almost not true in any situation ever. And so if there's things we can do to improve, if there's things that we can evaluate to make sure that...
Don't all these trucks have trackers on them? Can't you like track everything to see if the plow truck even hit that street that he's talking about?
We're hitting what we need to hit.
Yeah.
We want to look into it, and we want to correct it. In terms of trash pickup, I understand that people are frustrated about trash pickup, and if there's specific questions about certain areas or how things are currently working, people that are behind, we also have our Deputy Director of Solid Waste as well as our Administrator of Solid Waste here who can speak to specifics. Obviously, when it snows that much, it's going to have some impact on services. Our crews, our DPW crews, as well as both contractors, were out on Monday while it was still snowing, trying to pick up trash. Obviously, it was slower going than usual, as you can expect. Certain areas, had even longer delays depending on which location their trash was picked up at. This is our in DPW districts, our union workforce, in the other areas, it's Republic or Waste Management.
Yeah.
They've tried to keep pace as much as possible. If there's specific concerns about areas and trash being missed, we want to look into them.
Sure.
And obviously, everybody's doing the best with the conditions they're dealt.
Yeah.
So.
Just as FYI, our trash day was Friday. We were told slide rule Saturday. And here we are Thursday night, and the trash is all still out there, just as an FYI. Last question in phase one, if I may.
For the best, what are you paying?
Looking at on slide 4, if that's where we are, the 6-inch rule. Your second bullet point, I just want to clarify, it was a little confusing when you say leadership, blah, 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 rather than waiting for the 6-inch threshold to be met.
Sure, and
I thought we were done with the 6-inch threshold rule.
Correct. That's speaking to the old policy. So rather than waiting for a 6-inch threshold to be met, we can assess weather conditions in real time. And I think that actually speaks to something I wanted to mention, which is this 6-inch rule that was in effect prior to 2020, November of 2020. Departmental leadership, but also in many cases our residents and counselors at the time saw that to be an arbitrary measurement. And what I mean by that is it could be 6 inches of accumulation, but that's not taking into account what kind of accumulation is. Is it a dry snow or a wet snow? Is there ice in there? What are the pavement temperatures over the next couple of hours? That's just 6 inches as measured by the National Weather Service. So when we were addressing this winter weather event, we were instead looking, and I would love to call up some of our DPW operations leadership, Steve Pruitt, DPW Administrator. He is our resident meteorologist, and he was working directly with the National Weather Service and ensuring that we understood hour by hour what the projections were for this weather event, and we were able to respond to the specific weather event. So rather than waiting for an arbitrary 6 inches of accumulation, that could be, a compacted snow, it could be a light snow, it could be a very slippery snow, it could be more of a traction snow. Like, rather than being able to assess that, it was just, we were, in a way, clipping our own wings when it came to what DPW plows were equipped to assess on any given snow fight. So that means that when this policy changed, when we included those 300 centerline miles of connector roads, that means these folks are now trained to go and address those connector roadways. That was something that prior to this change, those maps that we were handing folks and training them on did not account for those connector roadways. Because we were saying that in an instance of 6 inches or more accumulation, that is when those roadways would be addressed, and the contractors would be the ones called out to do it.
Councilor Jones, if it's okay with you, because there's been a lot of questions about like what conditions we're evaluating and what factors we're looking at when we make decisions like this. Our street administrator, Steve Pruitt, is,
I mean, it would have been a good idea to answer the
combating
question.
inclement weather in central Indiana.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear from Steve.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So when we make a decision of what we're going to do with contractors or not do with contractors, what we look at is the aspect. When we decided not to call out contractors, the forecast was calling for another 4 inches of snow, and then it was calling for sleet right after that. So if that's the case, if the sleet would have came, the snow, by not removing the snow, the sleet would have hit the snow and not stuck to the pavement. If we go in there and remove the top layer, with all the compact of people driving on it, they're stopping at the intersections, taking off again. The exhaust from their cars melts it and then refreezes. So at every intersection that you came to would be a sheet of ice. You would slide right through the intersection and not be able to stop. So that's one of the concerns we look at is what's the additional weather that's coming? What conditions do we have? Until today, we've only had one other day above 33 degrees here in Indianapolis. We have not had a night since, I think, December 27th, that we've had a night above 32 degrees. So when we look at this and you look at what the temperatures are going to be, this coming weekend, as President Quick already acknowledged, we're going to be out this coming weekend. We've got rain coming in tomorrow, Saturday, 40 degrees. But at night, it's going to get down to 18. That water's going to freeze if we're not out there with our people doing this. So some of these side streets that still have snow on them, they're going to be protected more than others. And people don't realize that. There's a lot that goes into this, a lot of things that we look at. What's the forecast for the next few days? Are we going to get pavement temperatures? Are we going to get sunshine to help us? And again, all of this goes along. So when we went out and did the connectors this year, we put down salt. If we would have had a contractor go out, it wouldn't have been salted. So you would have had that sheet of ice. So the connectors that DPW hit were all salted. Contractors don't have that ability. So that's the other thing we look at when you take off that layer, what's going to happen underneath it.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Chairwoman Carlino's next.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Damn,
and thank you for your
Carlino, what the hell happened to you?
presentations. I
Man,
think
that face is fucking loaded.
the biggest thing I keep going back to is the map on slide 5. It's the only time that I see it. You can go to see the map online, of course, but with the change in policy, it also changed something that I think residents were used to. And while I'm on social media and I know, WTHR picked up some of these things, regular communication about the policy and then what residents can do. What does that mean for residents? Because I think we've heard tonight there's no contest. Our men and women of AFSCME are out there driving those massive, apparatus with grace and not causing that property damage and getting out there and doing wonderful jobs. They know the maps like the backs of their hands, but I don't think residents know those maps. And so the confusion when they didn't see that, when that 6-inch threshold was held, well, okay, that means they can call the snow fight out sooner even, but why haven't they in explaining that? Because I don't disagree with Mr. Pruitt just in, the anecdotal shoveling of my own driveway, on Monday, a week after the events, my daughter slid down the driveway. But I'd been staying on my stuff.
Yeah, Steve, you're completely right, though. You were right. I was trying to think. I was like, did they call for sleet or not? And they didn't. It was just, and it didn't even really get cold until like a week later, or like maybe 5 days later. And there was still snow on the ground. And I was looking up to see and I knew that salt was effective at a certain temperature, and it was basically 10 degrees. But you can use magnesium chloride. It's just way more expensive. So is that even on the table that what we can use then if we want to melt some of that snow?
But shoveling that top layer, as Mr. Pruitt stated,
You have a link to that Facebook
having
page?
those contractors come out would have just taken off the top layer in some instances, in some parts of my district that is also very hilly. So again, it's complicated. It's an art and a science, I believe. But I have to just think that it's not equitable, even taking a look at some of those connector routes. And then you all, you know, in the DPW family, and even those of us, we have this sort of speak where we know what connectors are, and maybe we don't, because Keystone, you would think, right? So how can we educate residents, do a better job? And I think if 13 out of 25 of us had questions, and that's not even the other half of the council that couldn't make it this evening.
Okay, I found it.
Had more tools in our toolboxes to say, hey, HOA X, you know, you should maybe think about calling out your contractors this year, because our DPW teams have let us know they're probably not going to call those out. And then we wouldn't have had those days. I think it was a perfect storm, not to be punny, but school started back for our students that week. And so it was very much a public safety issue, quite frankly, at the bus stops. However, plowing may have made it worse in some neighborhoods. We can't say. I think
I can.
Thinking about that, though, moving forward, it has to be better communicated, more well communicated. I know you do a wonderful job and make yourselves available for the media, but really using our media friends as partners and say, let's get out some PSAs. I mean, I literally have, you know, again, I don't know who's watching from home, hopefully, but residents on the far west side in District 11 are forming GoFundMes for their neighborhoods. They're calling and asking, can we talk to the county treasurer to raise our property taxes? Residents want to pay for more.
No one's doing that. Nobody's doing that. Shut the fuck up. No one's doing that. It's much cheaper just to hire somebody anyway. Plus, you know, this is where, like, this is a perfect example why you shouldn't be trusting the government, or you could actually do a lot more when you're not relying on the government if you were a community. But the problem is, I mean, there's a lot of problems with this whole community thing, because we don't have people from this country. We have a bunch of street shitters and people that eat animals, that are domesticated animals, like my neighbors.
Not heard any single complaint about the DPW crews that were out, but why weren't we armed with more knowledge to be able to advocate for our own neighborhoods and streets? Because we would have done it, but we were waiting, so many of us in our neighborhoods, looking out our windows, wondering when the snow fight was going to come from the contracting team.
You know,
and that's my main concern. And I know I'll yield back because I'll give my time, but and I know we are on this council, we're very pro-neighborhood, but
no,
we need the administration to help us be pro-neighborhood too. And I don't know.
When's the last time you've had a town forum, Carlino? When's the last time anybody well, Josh Bain had one last month, but when's the last time anybody on that council has had a town forum? Huh? My Jessica McCormick, my counselor, Fiona McCormick, has blocked me on Facebook. Same thing with Jared Evans. So shut the fuck up. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, if that's engaging MNAs more, or creating toolkits for BNS to disseminate, or DPW, because again, I think, you know, Hoosiers show up, and they would have shown up for their own neighborhoods to dig things out and get things ready for the babies to go back to school.
Absolutely, and I greatly appreciate that, Counselor. I think, again, I just want to commend our communications team. I know that they were working around the clock as well to make sure that our social media channels were updated, to make sure that we were having as much media availability as possible, to put out releases. So I do want to commend them. I think that if I have the opportunity to do so, I would love to just once again shout out the indy.gov/snow, or our winter weather preparedness landing page on the indy.gov website. That has a ton of information, and whatever we're trying to put out to the public on our social media channels, we also try to replicate there to the best of our abilities. Obviously, that is more of a, you know, at any given time, what is the department's response kind of resource, but we also do try to utilize, again, social media to the best of our ability and make sure that we are being very responsive to
they're not.
Our
they're actually
partners,
awful on social media.
To the Mayor's Action Center, to our Mayor's Neighborhood Advocates. There are a lot of questions out there, and I completely understand that. And listen, I do not expect every resident out there to have all of this committed to memory by any means. So we do really, really try to emphasize our public engagement and communication in that way, completely understanding that this is a lot of very complex information, and I have Steve Pruitt to ask about what the weather for the next 12 hours is going to look like, and residents unfortunately don't have his phone number. So I hear you completely, and that's something that we are always trying to do more of and invest in. So I encourage residents who might be watching tonight, please check out our indy.gov website, indy.gov/snow, or just type in snow or winter weather into the search bar. And then in addition, follow us on social media at Indy DPW, or on Facebook, it's Indianapolis Department of Public Works.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's kind of
Councilor
terrible.
Rowley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to start off by saying, similar to the rest of the councilors here, how thankful we are for the men and women that were out in the trucks plowing the snow that was plowed. That was a thankless job, and they were, like like we heard, that they were away from their families during that time, when a lot of us were at home with our families. So thank you for your work and your efforts.
Stop it! Just stop it with that.
However,
no more
I understand
saying that.
in your guys' position as leadership of DPW, you're put into a tough situation. The snow came, all heck broke loose, and you have to make these tough decisions. I think what a lot of people at home were seeing were these people out in these trucks, and they were thankful for them. However, they're wondering when these, as we've said many times here tonight, that they're wondering when's their street going to get done.
Yeah.
And in the past, they've seen where we've worked with contractors, so it kind of set a precedence for what to expect when we have this type of snow. And I don't know that I fully understand or agree with the idea that if we did plow it, then it becomes a sheet of ice, because the more cars are driving on it, the more it becomes a sheet of ice. That's evident in just about every neighborhood that didn't get plowed, because now all those neighborhoods are a sheet of ice anyway because they didn't get plowed and they were driven on top of, and it just compacted the snow into ice.
There we go.
So I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think there could have been a potential for, at this point we'll never know because it's over. It's already happened. But hopefully for the next one when it comes, we're a little more prepared and a little more ready to say yes to the contractors, just to make sure that we're getting all these streets handled in a proper, timely manner. And like I said, you had a tough decision to make, and that's something that was vested in you to make that decision. And I will respect the decision you make. However, I may not agree with the decision you make. I just hope in the future we're a little more ready to call these contractors in, because like I said, I think the snow was packed down so much by the cars driving on it anyway that it all became ice anyway. So I think that was inevitable. It was that we weren't showing that we were out there doing the work outside of our team in-house to get this work done. And it seems like we were just kind of punting it off and letting it go. So, hopefully in the future we can make those changes. But, again, I appreciate all the work the men and women did out there on the streets. Thank you for that. And just hopefully in the as it continues, we can adjust where we're making these decisions at. So, thank you.
Councilor Bain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to echo what everyone said tonight about our crews out on the street. It's I couldn't even imagine what you all have gone through over the past couple weeks. And thank you, Director and Deputy Director, for being here. There's a lot of questions that residents have, but first and foremost, do you guys think this was a successful snow response?
Sure, Counselor.
I forgot what he said.
First of all, thank you for your comments. What I said at the top, in terms of the work that our crews have put in, that our management team has put in, I am unbelievably grateful for that effort, and I'm proud of the work that they've done and that the city has done to keep our roads safe. I understand that counselors and members of the public can have different viewpoints about what the right call is, given conditions, given all the different things that we talked about. And I don't expect every single person to agree with my perspective on this, or our, broadly as an administration leadership's perspective on this. I you know, to give you a simple answer, yeah, I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm proud of the way that the department responded. I'm proud of the way that our crews responded.
Good God. This is a bad leader, by the way. This is a very bad leader. With the amount of crap that this guy got, and he's going to say that I'm very proud of everything, of all this stuff. You could be proud of the people all you want, but I would be saying is like, I feel like we could still do better. You know, there were some people that I heard, you know, this is why we're all here today, because I didn't do a good job. So him living in this fucking fantasy world of saying, oh, I actually did a really good job. What are you talking about? Pats himself on the back. Thanks, Shoddy. Unbelievable.
You know, of course, every single time you go through something like this, you're looking for ways that you can improve in the future. And as I said before, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every single thing is perfect, that we have every single thing we could ever want as a department. Of course, that's not true. And when we move into conversations for the spring fiscal and the budget, we look forward to having conversations with council, as we always do, about what further investments we can make in our department. So, you know, as I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything's perfect. I believe in DPW. I believe in our people. And I believe in our plans and our preparation, and that's my answer.
So, you know, when it comes to snow response and the 70 number has been thrown out a lot, and I do appreciate how quickly you've been responding to me over the past couple weeks. You know, I think we can all agree 70 is probably not enough. And maybe it's enough for this plan that I think has major flaws in it. But when was the last time that DPW, and I know you're the CFO, so you're probably intimately involved with the budgetary negotiations. When was the last time DPW requested additional dollars for plows?
Yeah, so DPW is like, obviously, as a department, we're always articulating a broad number of needs. And because DPW is funded with mostly dedicated revenue sources, as members of this committee, you know, you understand DPW's funding structure better than you probably far ever wanted to. We have received, what I'll tell you first of all is that we've received new snow trucks even as of this year. So the department has continued to add to our fleet over time. In terms of a specific funding request, I think vehicle procurement in general is always part of our discussion every budget cycle, which, you know, when we come to the table with the controller's office, with
just answer the question, man.
With this body,
holy jeez,
we're always looking at what further investments we can make in terms of.
Oh my God, I hate these politics crap answer.
And that happens probably every cycle. We look at what those priorities should be. So.
He literally asked you, hey, when's the last time you asked for more money for snow trucks? Oh, I don't know. Let me give you this long fucking answer that's really not answering the question.
I do appreciate the questions about the size of our fleet. As I said, for our plow map, for the plan that our team prepares for year-round, fortunately, again, because of the work of IFS, year-round, we did exceed that vehicle threshold, able to deploy fully across our routes when the snow started falling and before, as we pre-treated roads and stuff like that. And, you know, of course we plan to have continued conversations with council and with everybody internally about whether we can find resources to continue to procure not just snow trucks, obviously, but trash trucks and street sweeping equipment.
Dude, we just want to know about the trash trucks.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Good God.
I have a lot of questions, so I kind of want to speed through this a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you.
What roads do we salt? Because I live on one of the red roads, and I'm assuming it's a secondary street and not a thoroughfare, at least what you guys would have it labeled. And it was plowed, I think, one time, about a quarter of the way through the first snowfall. So there's been a lot on it since then, and it's one of those mini roads that are just sheets of ice. And I agree with what my other counselor said about you know, plowing those roads and then that making it worse. I don't know how plowing a road makes it worse. But what roads do we salt?
So if Steve is still around, he maybe can provide a little bit more context, but all of our trucks, you know, that we're using both for major thoroughfares, the big trucks, and smaller, lighter-duty vehicles that we're using for the connector streets are able to drop salt. And that's a difference between DPW vehicles that we procured specifically for snow fight versus, again, some of these contractor companies, they are companies that usually do other things that have access to vehicles that you can equip plows on. So they're not procured
Yeah,
necessarily
I get that, but is it
specifically
just,
for this.
do we just like only plow thoroughfares? Do we plow second or salt
Can you speak
thoroughfares?
to salting?
What do we salt?
We've got a basic base map that we work off of. Each area, each district has so many areas that they're responsible for. Each area has roughly 19 miles in each route of each area. So what we do is everything that is covered in our book gets salted. We salt everything that we plow. We don't plow anything and not drop salt. So I think the numbers I
Okay.
looked at today, everything that we've done so far this year, plowing wise, is close to 110,000 miles
Okay.
that we've already plowed. That 110,000 miles has also been salted.
Yeah, and I don't want to
Multiple
disagree
times.
with you because you're going to know a lot more about this than me. But I can tell you there's been a lot of streets on that map that have not been
But there's
salted.
a lot of streets that's on the map that are not snow routes. They show the residential streets and everything else on the maps.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
We just do what is highlighted for our route.
Is your map, but is your map those red and blue streets that are on that map?
Yeah, my map's black and white, so.
Yes, the snow plow map that is
Yeah.
on the website and that you're referencing is our DPW plow map.
Yeah, a lot of those have not been salted, or I will at least speak to the ones in my district, and I know you guys aren't really the people to blame, because it sounds like neither of you were even here. when this
They are the people to blame. They are the ones that are in control right now. That's why they're at the table.
policy was changed, and you are in an impossible position, I think, to defend this. And I will definitely concede one thing. I don't think the 6-inch policy was right. You know, because you're telling me if you get 5 3/4 inches, nothing's going to happen. You know, I don't think that's appropriate. But I also don't think it's appropriate for tax-paying residents to not have the residential streets plowed, because I'll ask you a question I've been asked multiple times, because I've explained the current policy to so many people that reach out to me, and they say, well, Josh, what good is a plowed thoroughfare if I can't even get out of my neighborhood? And I don't know what to tell them other than, you're absolutely right. Like, that's not a good situation.
Sure. You know, I think anecdotally, I live on a street that was an unplowed residential roadway, east-west facing, so higher amounts of accumulation due to wind patterns, and I drive a Ford Fusion, which isn't known to necessarily be an all-terrain vehicle. I was able to traverse my alleyway and the roadway, in part due to the fact that snow had compacted, and that meant that there were tread lines that had traction. So I was fortunate, I was not slip-sliding around. That is obviously anecdotal, and I understand that wouldn't be everyone's
Oh my
experience.
God.
Were you about to?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Totally gaslighting Josh Bain. Gaslighting that honestly, Shadi over here is gaslighting all of you. She's saying, well, I didn't have that problem, so sucks for you. It's like, what the hell are we even talking about?
I understand that people are coming to you with, you know, all sorts of feedback on the city's response, and it's difficult to respond to each and every one of those without like being there with them and seeing the conditions as they saw them. And I understand that everybody's street's different, different inclines, different vehicles, and so I get that, and I don't expect everybody to have the same exact experience that I personally had. You know, like Natalie said, you know, all of the people that are involved with DPW's snow fight operation, leadership, decision makers for the city, you know, we all live in Marion County too. We all live on the same streets that your constituents live in. Of course, you know, we all have a council member that, you know, we are the constituent of. And so, like Natalie said, you know, I my personal experience was at no point in the snowstorm such that I couldn't get off my road in my, again, just not to
Oh
harp on
my
this,
God,
Honda
these
Civic that I
people are the
drive.
fucking worst.
That's not to say that other people didn't have trouble, and I don't want to diminish that feedback that you've received.
That's
but that
unbelievable
experience
right
was not
now.
the experience of everyone in the city.
I think it was the experience of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Look at
here's
Paula
the
NA. Look
thing
at
that
Paula NA right here. Look at this.
That feedback that you
Look at
received.
Paula NA.
But that experience was not the experience of everyone in the city.
I think it was the experience of a lot of people.
Right here.
Sure, absolutely.
But here's the
Oh,
thing
hold
that
on,
I
you can't
really
even
want
see
to
me.
drive home, because I think
Oh,
this
you couldn't even see me when he said that.
Because I think this.
That feedback that you've received, but that
It
experience
was
was not the experience of
unbelievable.
everyone in the city.
Absolutely unbelievable.
I think it was the experience of a lot of people.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
But here's the thing that I really
can't
want to drive
believe
home,
it.
because I think this is there's a bigger picture issue here, and over the past week, I reached out to a lot of community leaders, elected officials in neighboring communities. I reached out to people in Fishers, Carmel, Plainfield, Mooresville, Martinsville.
There you go.
Speedway, Lawrence, tons of other surrounding communities. Every single one of them plows residential streets. Every single one. And I ask them, well, what's your threshold? Is it 6 inches? And they laugh at me. They're like, no, if there's a couple inches of snow, we're going to go do it. And that's communities like Martinsville that has 4 snow plows. And they plow every residential street. And I think Indianapolis is a first-class city.
I don't.
And that's what I tell people when I try to convince them to move to Indianapolis.
I do not. I do not. Sorry, Josh. Sorry, Councilor Payne, but I tell everybody not to move to Indy. In fact, whenever anybody ever asks me, it's like, where do you live? I go, Indianapolis. Like, oh. And I go, yeah, I know. It's a shithole. It's a dystopian shithole run by fucking morons. Not Josh Payne, of course, but everybody on the other side of the table.
I tell people when I try to get developers to come to Indianapolis
I don't.
to invest. How can we be a first-class city when
We're not,
we don't
that's
offer
why.
a basic service that all of our surrounding communities do? I don't know how we do that. And this is one of the many reasons, I think, why we continue to have a declining population in Indianapolis.
Oh, I'm glad. You know what, Josh Payne? I'm glad you mentioned that. All right, let's look at this real quick. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I already had this thing because I was going to do it for another video. Look at Hendricks County. Hold on, make sure that you can see me. Okay, here we go. Hold on. Boop. All right, so what do we got? Indianapolis over here all on the far right. But let's just look at Marion County. From 2020 to 2023, they've lost over 8,700 people. Johnson County has 6,000 people they've gained. Hamilton County, of course, has 25,000 people, something like that. Hendricks County has 9,000. Do I do my public school math workout? But yeah, we are in a declining population right now, and it's because of Democrats. It's 100% because of Democrats. If you look at Chicago, they have not had as few as people. The last time they had this few people was during the Depression, like almost 100 years ago. They've never had this few amount of people. It's because of Democrat policies. 100%. That's why. I would never tell anybody to move to Indy.
The fact that our capital city continues to lose people. They are choosing to live in surrounding communities, and I don't necessarily think someone's making that sole decision based off of whether or not the residential street gets plowed. But it's definitely a key component, and I really want to work with everyone on this committee and on this council, because I think this requires a bipartisan solution. I think we need some sort of policy similar to the 6-inch policy, but that threshold obviously needs to be lowered. And I don't know if that number's 3 inches, if that number's 3.5 inches, but my commitment to my colleagues, anyone watching, is we will have a vote on a proposal like that. And I don't know if it'll be next month, if it'll be 2 months. There's some due diligence that has to be done, but we will have a vote on something like that.
Counselor, if I may respond, you raised a couple questions earlier in those remarks, and certainly, you know, I don't expect every member of this committee or you to agree with where we're coming at this from, but just, you know, with the comparisons to other communities, and you know this, you know, Indianapolis does have some differences with smaller communities that are, you know, to our north or to our south or, you know, any direction. Obviously, we have more lane miles to take care of. And then the other thing, because we're in, you know, because we're a big metropolitan city, we have a lot of different types of roadways, including roadways that are in often cases much narrower than streets that you'd see in more suburban environments. And so that's not to dismiss those comparisons entirely. I think looking at the way other cities approach snow fight is a worthwhile exercise, and I think that you know, those calls you've made are a valid way to approach those comparisons. But it is important to note that there are some differences between a Carmel and an Indianapolis, not just in terms of when we get into, you know, funding discussions and stuff like that, but in terms of the actual particulars of the community.
Yeah, I get that. Our budget's a lot bigger than
that.
theirs.
Yeah.
Our budget's a lot bigger than theirs. Yeah, so I don't really have anything else to say other than, again, if we're going to be a first-class city, we have to offer basic services that people expect.
You know, the problem is once the snow melts, nobody will be talking about this anymore. Nobody, then like when next year comes along and we get a bunch of snow, it'll get talked about again. And the problem is leadership. And there's none in Indianapolis. There's none in the GOP. The Democrats don't have any leadership. They haven't had any forever. Hogsett is totally missing in action. DPW is garbage. They need a new leader. Hey, I'm available. You know that I would totally make DPW better too. But that's the problem. Like, everybody is so concerned about all these social issues. Hey, Brandon Hergy was one of the worst people around for sure. He was so concerned back in like March or April. I'd have to go find the clip. He was like, oh, you know what? Our number one priority is going to be DEI training. Like, really? Why do you need DEI training to fill potholes? And it was just that kind of garbage leadership that is just ruining DPW. And I don't, you know what? And oh, wait a minute. Am I missing? I am missing. Hold on. There we go. So, like, I don't know what else you're supposed to do. You know, I'm going to rant after this whole thing, so don't worry. It's coming up.
Councilor Brown. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for being here.
Oh,
and I'll do the requisite.
Brown.
I think AFSCME Local 725, everybody working is heroes. I think you're working too hard. I think you should have triple the money you have, frankly. And so nothing I say is meant as any kind of comment on the work of our union employees. But, I mean, I came into this meeting pretty angry, and I'm far angrier after seeing this presentation, quite frankly. Councilor Bain asked you a question. Do you think that this snow response has been adequate? And after a lot of hemming and hawing, you basically came and said, yes, it's not.
Man, I can't believe it. Mark this day. Me and the old ketamine cowboy, ass clown Jesse Brown, fucking agree with each other on this whole thing. This is a bipartisan issue, and I said that for a little while now. I've been saying it on, you know, on Twitter. I was like, this is low-hanging fruit. Like, this is messed up. It's fucked up, and it has to be fixed. And everybody in that council recognizes it. The only people who don't recognize it is DPW. And it's because they're covering for themselves right now.
It has not at all been acceptable, like not in any way. And that's very clear to the vast majority of constituents of this city. And you know that. You keep talking about our constituents reach out to us. Our constituents reach out to you. Our constituents reach out to the Mayor's Action Center. And based on data that I was able to pull, we had over 600 calls more than the average week over the period from January 5th through January 13th. 47 calls in all of 2024 had to do with snow and ice. We got 487 of them just in that week this year. 212 trash pickup calls was an average bad week in 2024. We got 646 over that 1 week in 2025. That's over 3 times the average. I almost, just while I was sitting here waiting for this to start, I got a voicemail from somebody, and I almost just want to play it into the mic just so you can hear in people's voice, who sound more upset than I do and more upset than Councilor Nielsen. And I feel like you're not listening and you're just totally disconnected from what the people of the city are experiencing. And when I say you, I'm looking you both in the eyes because you're sitting here. This isn't directed at you. This is directed at Mayor Hogsett, who is the reason that we're in this position.
You know what? He can take part of the blame, but at the same time, these are DPW officials. They could change this right now. They could change policy, but they don't because they're cowards. Both of them, Shoddy and office-based guy, they're both cowards. They don't want to step up to leadership and be like, hey, you know what? We need to actually change this whole thing. They were like, no. We need to do it as a holistic measure.
But I know that you're doing his work and representing him here. I've got constituents who've said that their children have slipped and fallen and hurt themselves on the ice while waiting for the school bus.
That happens.
Or talked at home about, do I have to go to school today? It's so scary to be in the school bus as it's sliding up and down residential streets, which are all sheets of ice at this point.
That usually happens.
I've had IMPD officers complaining to constituents that they can't do their job well because the streets are not safe for them to be out, much less help protect our safety. The heroes from Local 725 in the solid waste trucks. I've been in those trucks. I have done the ride-alongs, and I know that it can be dangerous. You're getting the suspension shattered on those vehicles, especially in the alleys, even in the best of conditions. When you can't dodge potholes, like we're risking our equipment, we're risking our union staff people's health and safety, and working them on 12-hour shifts because you refuse to call in contractors, unacceptable. You talked about all the work you did in your communications team. I don't care, and neither do constituents, about the work. We don't. You could be doing work. You could dig a hole, take all the dirt, and put it in another hole. You're working all day long. Who cares? What are the results? And the results are unacceptably bad. Your comms teams
He's not wrong. Honestly, and I hate
about how many
to admit
tons
it.
of salt you're using. Did any constituent ask that question? Did any constituent ask how many tons of salt or how many hours of overtime? They want to know if their streets are cleared, and they're not. And, you know, while we're talking on comms, and I'm getting upset, I'm going to start hitting the table as well because I think it's merited here, and I think that any average constituent you pull off the street would be more frustrated and less professional than I'm being right now. But the last thing I'll say,
Me?
communicating this change continued. It was slide number 6, if you could pull that up. You know, you mentioned that you had shared comms with people, and again, I think I'd categorize most of the comms that you've shared as defensive or pretending that the work was done better than it was. And I felt gaslit. Most of my constituents who reached out to me
What did
told
I
me they felt
say?
gaslit.
I can't believe what's going on right now. Everything that I said, Jussie is agreeing with. Oh my God.
By that. But you can't really read it in that tiny little font. But that third, I took the time and I looked up all of these Facebook posts and read all of them because you can't really read them on the slide you sent. And what that third one says was, I think, the best comms that I've seen this, you know, compared to what's happening right now or elsewhere. It says, we hear you. With more snow on Indy roadways after this morning's accumulation, Team DPW has secured additional contractors to address side streets and residential roadways not previously plowed this week. As many as 100 vendor trucks will mobilize within the next 24 hours. So at that point, you were able to hear when people were frustrated that their initial response was inadequate. Why can you not hear us now? I don't need an answer. That's rhetorical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Jones. I would be remiss not to, again, thank you for the invitation as a guest counselor. I am a previous member of this committee, served on it for a couple of years, and in sitting through this meeting, I appreciate your seriousness to the committee and to the issues, as well as your enthusiasm, so thank you for the invitation.
All right, I figured it
I'm
out.
going to do what everybody who has spoken tonight has done and thank the men and women of DPW and the union for the hard work that they've done. They are also first responders. We think about police and fire and EMS, those who are on the ground, plowing the snow, salting the streets are first responders. But I again want to draw the distinction that my comments are not directed at those on the ground. My comments are directed at the administrators and those who are making the high-level decisions. And I feel the need to reiterate that because this meeting began with members of this committee being lectured and bullied and it being suggested that any criticism, feedback, or comments were somehow taking away the life-risking work that these folks do. And I find that insulting. I've been here for like 6 years now, and this has been the most insulting meeting I've been to in a long time, if not ever, and I'm just the guest, so I can't imagine how those who are on here all of the time feel.
Yeah, man, he nailed it right there with that. I mean, for sure. You had the union guy basically like, stop criticizing us. Don't you know we're working really hard? It's like, we're not talking about you, man. You're just following orders, basically. And all NA is right. Like, they're just getting completely insulted. They're getting Brown's right. They're getting gaslit. It's unbelievable, like, how bad. Did I not? If all of you that are hanging out still, did I not tell you like this meeting was completely crazy? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I got like a whole bunch of shit after this. This is going to be really good.
So
I have a plan, by the way. I have a plan. Should I just show you now? All right, I'll just show you now. I have a plan. All right, so this is what I did. I took a grid off of the blue and the red, right? The connector streets, blah, blah, blah. We have 70 plow trucks, right? We have 70 current plow trucks. So what I did is that I know Center Township has the most amount of people. Wayne Township is second. But I said, you know what? Why don't we just see, like, I didn't even look at population. I'm just looking it out with my eyes. So I just added a bunch of different plow trucks. So this is 70 plow trucks right now. And you're telling me right now that DPW couldn't figure this out? Hey, you know what? We need to make sure we are the most efficient with all 70 plow trucks to get everything cleaned up. You could have all this stuff cleaned up in a day. Literally in a fucking day. If you just sent out all 70 trucks. Crazy that I was able to do this during this meeting.
But that's out of the way. I have a few questions, and if I need to relinquish back to Chairman Jones and come back, not a problem. Some statistics I wanted to share with you, Director, and just get your thoughts. Noblesville has 600 lane miles, 22 plows. Fishers has 1,200 lane miles, 45 plows. Indianapolis has 84 lane miles and 70 plows. 7 times the lane miles, but only 25 more plows. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Counselor. And once again, you know, it sounds like there's been some specific questions on comparisons to neighbor communities. We are happy to help out with those comparisons and to give you a longer response than I can give you here now on the spot. Of course, you know, going back to our presentation, it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of the other communities without working there and understanding their system.
But at face value, does it concern you that we have 7 times the lane miles of these communities and we only have 25 more plows? Does the basic philosophy, does the basic foundation of the question concern you that maybe there's some deeper digging to do? Deeper digging to do, excuse me. Words are getting kind of tricky there. We've been here a while. But you understand, I mean, I don't need the big diagram that compares Indianapolis and the size and the scope and the length. I just want to know, at face value, are you concerned or bothered by the simple statistic that we have 7 times the lane miles of these communities with only 25 more plows? Would that suggest to you that maybe we ought to have more plows or hit the contractor button and actually get something done?
Sure, understood. And I appreciate that Council is concerned about investments in DPW's equipment, personnel, all that stuff. And I'm happy to have a conversation with Council or anyone else about what we can do to better prepare
can't answer the
our
question.
crews and to provide more investments.
He can't answer the question.
Full stop. Happy to have that
So I'm going to ask you the question one more time and move on if you don't want to answer it. At face value, does it concern you that we have 7 times the lane miles and only 25 more plows in surrounding communities? Yes or no? Don't want to answer.
You're asking a question about.
It's not hypothetical. Just as a comment,
believe
as a
this
fact
right
that at face value, these communities have far less than we have in terms of lane miles, but almost the same amount of snowplows. Would you agree with me that we ought to take a look into that?
As I said,
oh
in
my God,
initial answer, I'm
he's not
happy
answering.
to take a deeper look into that.
Okay, well, let the record reflect there was no answer given. Next question. We talked about if contractors get deployed, that a lot of times they're different companies, and so there's a wide variation in the results, right? Is that correct, that what you said?
Yes.
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 Thank you for the answer. Would you agree that wide variations are better than no variations?
Well, it depends on the conditions. And so, as I said, it's not just about the variation in how roads are treated. It's about, you know, whether you think, first of all, that those private contractors are going to do a good job and make those streets safer, A, and B, as I said, the snow is getting plowed somewhere. So, you know, if it's getting plowed, it's getting plowed onto the sides of the streets. So I don't know what more you want me to say than that. As I said, there are a variety of factors that go into the decision on whether
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, what a yapping
next question would
answer.
Be, you talked about that we have a lot of narrow streets, and so obviously that can cause an issue. The south side of my district has no narrow streets, so how come we can't get some plows?
Yeah, understood. So I think, you know, you'll all recognize that your districts have differences in infrastructure, differences in things like that. The streets and their width and how cars are parked on them obviously is not going to impact some areas as much as it impacts others. And so if that is not the only reason, obviously, that we didn't decide to call in contractors. It's one of a bunch of factors that you have to take into account for a decision like that.
They're protecting
So,
Hogsett right now. They are 100% protecting Hogsett. Somebody fucked up and they told them, cover it up for us. That's the only reason I could even think. Because I have never, and you guys know how many of these committee videos I have watched and how many hours I have spent sitting in this fucking chair watching this stuff. I have never, ever seen anything so awful. And Anna said it perfectly. Just straight up insulting. The gaslighting, the non-answers, the yappy bullshit, and they just will not answer the question. They're protecting Hogsett, or they're protecting some really bad decision, or they're protecting themselves, which is probably like, who is running the show? I want to know who's running the show in DPW right now.
That might not apply to your district, but it would apply to other counselors who have the same concerns that you do here tonight, certainly.
But just want to, again, remind, just for the record, it doesn't impact my district. My next question would be, does the tone and the line of questioning, are you surprised with this meeting tonight?
Okay, here we go.
To be honest with you, we came into this meeting to provide information to questions we've received about our snow fight operation.
Does the tone, does the line of questioning, are you surprised by that tonight?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised.
Why?
I'm neither surprised nor not surprised.
We are also actively receiving communications from residents. And again, I want to shout out our communications team. They are also a first line of defense when it comes to communicating with our residents. So we fully understand the concerns of our residents, of your constituents, and we work diligently to prioritize safety and to try to make the best decisions with the information available to us.
I asked a question. If you guys don't want to answer it, just simply say next. I've got one more. Are you surprised by the line of questioning and the tone from this committee to you?
I think we've already provided the answer that we're going to provide.
I don't think you did, so you might want to go back and watch that this evening. My last question is this.
I wish Anna would have been this more fired up. I want to see more of this style, Anna. Paul, if you're watching this right now, I want more of this, all right? I want this kind of fire every single time that I see you on TV. Because right now, the GOP is looking awful. They're close to having the red wall protecting Johnson County is very close to being taken down. And if we don't get some fiery people, right now, the only true person who should have been minority leader that is stepping up to the plate and taking, swinging home runs right now is Josh Bain. Michael Paul Hart isn't. He's just a standard GDP bro. But I want to see this kind of fire from here on out, Paul N.A.
We hear the idea that that we make the decisions. We make the decisions. We talk to the who is we, and specifically, where does the buck stop?
Sure. So, if I may answer the question, the decision about whether to call in contractors at the end of the day is a decision made by the administration, and I mean that in terms of administration leadership, me as the mayor's designee and interim director of the department. Obviously, we're not just making that decision without a consistent daily communication process with, again, our operations management team, who in some cases have decades of experience doing this exact job.
But my point is, there is no question that when you manage this type of line of work in the largest city in the state, right, the city of Indianapolis, capital city, there's obviously a tremendous amount of people and the input and the expertise that goes into evaluating when to pull the trigger on some of these. Sure. But ultimately, who makes the final decision? Somebody has to be the final say. Is it one person or is it a group of people? I'd like to know who is, as they would say, where does the buck stop? Yeah. It has to be a very small group, if not one person.
Understood. And I'll, again, hopefully answer your question as directly as possible. The decision on whether to call out contractors has to be made by the mayor or the mayor's designee in that decision. Now, it's hard for me to imagine a scenario.
He's protecting the mayor.
Where the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works would make a decision like that without having a broad agreement about how to proceed.
But as you know, whether it's the United States president or governor, they get great feedback in a situation room or whatever, but somebody pulls trigger, makes a decision. So my question is it your assessment that the buck stops with the mayor in agreement with the public works director? That's those two people that ultimately make the decision with expert advice.
Yeah, I don't know if there's, and this is me honestly not knowing, I don't know if ordinance specifically spells out who makes that decision. What I'll tell you is...
Well, you just went through it 2 weeks ago, so you know.
What I'll tell you is, I agree with the decisions we made. I supported the decisions we made. I'm comfortable with the decisions we made, and I'm proud of DPW.
That's not the question I asked. My last question is, Councilor Bain asked you if this was considered a success. You are the interim director, and so I'm going to assume the buck stops with you. I think that would be the most logical
One would think.
To assume. And so I think it's safe to say that, as you answered, Councilor Bain, and said you were very proud, I also am very proud. I'm very proud of my football. I was very proud of the Colts this year, even though they had a losing record. Just because, you don't have to be proud of somebody or proud of a department because, failure or success. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes. Is there a question?
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of my question, Director. That's very helpful. So the buck stops with you. I assume you made the decisions, although you wouldn't quite confirm that. What grade would you give yourself as the Director of the Department of Public Works today on the snow removal? And I don't know why you're rolling your eyes, sir. I really don't. That's a serious question. We had a big snow test this year, and this is a test. You're sitting in the chair. What grade would you give?
I'm not going to give myself a letter grade in answer to your question. I'm happy to answer it in other ways if you want, but if you want me to do that, I'm not going to.
Well, that is consistent with my line of questioning. And I would just say, last but not least, I'm
This is fucking pissing. I don't know how you guys are feeling. I know there's so little people in the chat right now, but I don't know how you guys are feeling. But I'm so fucking pissed off at just the smug motherfucker who is the interim DPW right now, not answering any of the questions, very basic questions of this whole thing. This guy should be fired. He should be replaced right now as interim director. I mean, Hergy sucked, but this guy's the fucking worst. I mean, the absolute worst.
Got a ton of calls and a ton of emails, and people, as other folks noted, they can't go out to the grocery store, they can't make doctor's appointments, they can't get their medicine and prescriptions
I've dealt with
filled,
somebody
they
like
can't
this
go to
before.
church for worship, a whole host of things. And so my responsibility as a representative of like 35,000 people in District 22 is to share that frustration. And I also am driving these same streets as they are. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I don't think the feedback that neighbors are giving to me or others, I don't think it's being taken seriously. I just feel like it's like, nah, I get it, but, our statistics and our operations plan, we hear what you're saying, but, but that's not everybody. Well, where I'm from, it sure feels like everybody.
Question? Okay, Chairman Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. let's just take a breather. We know it's intense, it's uncomfortable.
Any other questions?
It's at times difficult for us, and I want you to understand what you're feeling and seeing from us. A couple of my colleagues have been so angry now that I can actually just calm down, because I'm like, hey, you guys are getting a little too out of control, when usually it's me. But you just don't understand.
No, he doesn't understand.
The constituents calling us, people that we know, people we see in community meetings, and with every situation, right? But the ones that have impacted
this, hold up, Jared. I gotta say, this new interim DPW director, there's something wrong with his brain. Like, he's just not able to connect the dots. I'm sure he's really good at math and being the chief financial officer and all. But like, there's something broken in this guy's brain. Not Jared Evans, the interim DPW director. There's something wrong with him, or he doesn't recognize that, oh my God, I'm not answering the question, and I won't give myself a grade. As a leader, you should be constantly self-evaluating all the time. Could I have done this better? How could I have made this more efficient? What did I learn from this? Or I really fucked this up, and you're going to blame to somebody else. So now we know what's going on. We know that Shoddy and whatever that guy's name, the CFO guy, they are protecting themselves because of how bad of a job that they did. I thought at first they were protecting Hogsett, but it turns out that's not so much the case.
Impacted me the most and have made me the most angry. As a kid who grew up in inner city Indianapolis, 515 South Harding Street, knowing that our streets got plowed back then, are the older folks. And there are so many of them. They cannot even begin to shovel themselves out and get their car out, and they have doctor's appointments, they got to get medication. I mean, there's just a lot to it, and I want you to understand that. It's, and I want to be really clear. From my perspective, and from if you were to poll my constituents, the overwhelming majority, the city failed on this response.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult for me to sit here and listen what I feel like is all defensiveness. What I was hoping for was concrete. We hear you. We've gotten the phone calls, the messages, the emails. We think we're going to need to look at this. We want to change this because it's not about crews and people. I mean, we could talk about that as my colleagues have pointed out. Some of our communities around here. Well, the news did comparisons of cities that are of similar size too. Columbus, Ohio was used. So it's not just these communities, it's other cities. And what I've taken as a counselor is we love to compare ourselves to sister cities and know how are we doing in these fields. And so what I'm asking is that I hope this is what transpires after this committee meeting. That you guys go, you review this policy, you look at what other cities are doing, snow cities that are maybe sister cities, comparison cities. What are their responses? How do they do it? And don't leave here and just be angry because people are angry at you. Because we're angry because we've been getting it for over a week and a half. So now we're giving it to the administration.
As you should.
That's what's transponding here. And you need to understand that.
For children.
Nobody wants an 80-something-year-old woman not emailing, but calling me because she's stuck. And I know there's nothing coming to do that street. So I offered to gather some people and to go get her out of that situation. So I want this to be constructive because I can feel the tension, I can feel you're upset. It's a hard position to be in, but don't walk out of here and think that your response was okay. You may be doing that because
they will. They 100% will.
Because you've been told to do that, or you have to do that in your position. But, or maybe those watching on TV will know that a better response is needed, and it's needed this year. Not some thing coming down. And as far as whether or not we're plowing residential streets, I'm already working on an ordinance on that. I'm not waiting.
Counselor, if I may just very briefly respond. I appreciate the hard jobs that you have, truly. I mean, we're hearing from you because you're hearing from your constituents. I don't think that you're here making stuff up to make us feel bad.
Guy's
I
a
know that's
terrible
not
leader.
the case. So first of all, I just want to say, that, and I respect your role and the hard work that you do. To be clear about the materials that we have presented tonight, we received very specific questions from counselors and members of the community over a period of a couple weeks about very specific things. When was this policy changed? What was the old policy? What's the new policy? How is this change communicated to council and to members of the community? So if there's information in this presentation about that timeline and why those decisions were made, it's because we were responding to very specific questions that we received both from this body and from people externally. So I just wanted to say that. Secondly, the idea that I am sitting here saying things that I don't believe or don't want to say or being forced to say is not accurate.
You are, though.
And if I
You won't answer the questions. People have you said that you will not give yourself a grade. You will not, or you give this long-winded answer, and then you won't even answer just the question. Oh, I'm giving an answer. I'm just answering it the way I want to answer it. That's all. Oh, you want the answer that you want the answer? Well, you're not going to get that answer. I mean, this guy needs to be fired. I don't know. Someone needs to talk to Hogsett and change his position as interim director. Don't worry, I found his LinkedIn. We'll talk about that at the end.
I want to thank all of you for the roles that you serve in our community. You guys also do not get thanked enough. And I appreciate
they don't
that
need
you
their
are
far box
oftentimes the
punched,
first
okay?
folks that are getting called by residents who are upset with us.
Don't not tongue punch their far
When I started with the city, I
box.
started with the Mayor's Action Center. I was on the phone with folks that were upset about a number of things on any given day. And if anyone from the MAC is watching tonight, please know I appreciate the work that they do. I appreciate the work that you all do. I appreciate the work that our Mayor's Neighborhood Advocates do. I appreciate the work that our public information officers do. This is a huge effort, and it is not for nothing that we all wanted to be here tonight and make sure that we were here to answer your questions to the best of our ability. We prepared this presentation, again, based on questions that were sent to us, and that was not meant to act as an all-encompassing, like any question under the sun to be addressed within these slides. And we are more than happy to continue to be responsive to these questions to the best of our ability. I will say it right here, we hear you.
Awful.
We hear all of you. We hear the residents that you are here representing. And
look at this
with
guy,
every
he's
single
steaming
event
right
like
now.
this, we
Fuck
are
him.
able to learn from it. We are able to apply it to future events. And so our team here, obviously our AFSCME team, but also our operations leadership that we're also, working long hours and sleepless nights making these calls. I appreciate the amount of dedication they have, and really, really just want to say I am humbled by having been an active part of this snow fight, and I understand that residents have concerns. I understand that completely. We hear you completely. We're in a position where we are getting data in, and we are trying to make the best, safest decisions with that data. That does not always mean, hindsight is 20/20. That does not always mean that we won't have takeaways from a weather event that we can then apply to other events. So this isn't to say that because our policy is what it is, that a different weather event won't go another way. We are committed to serving the residents of Indianapolis, and we are committed to keeping them as safe as possible. And we understand that the next time there is a winter weather event, will be back in these rooms and having these tough conversations. And we appreciate all the feedback that we have heard tonight, and it will certainly come into play during those conversations.
I've been here for 5 years, all right? And I've been monitoring committee meetings for 2 years, give or take. And I've never heard them actually have this kind of conversation about snow stuff. If anything, it was like some kind of update on what happened, whether it was Parker, whether it was Hergy, and now dipshit over here. Like, you don't need to have these kind of conversations, an hour and a half meeting basically, or a 2 hour meeting, about how bad you guys fucked up. I've never once seen it. Like, you guys messed up that really bad, and you won't even take accountability for it. That's the worst part.
Conversations.
Fergie's been gone for what? Like 2 months or something?
Mr. Bain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be extremely brief, but based off your last comment, I really hope we're not back here having the same tough conversations in the future.
Yeah.
Because if we do, then it means we're not being heard. But, following Councilor Renee's line of questioning, and I feel like we keep falling back on contractors. And that's only a very tiny part of the discussion. I think the biggest issue that I have, that I hear, is when I look at that map that has the red and blue streets on it. There are so many grayed out, and it's the residential streets. And that's the issue. We're admitting defeat before we ever even start. We're saying there is a 0% chance that your road gets plowed. 0%. And they're tax-paying citizens not receiving a service that, as far as I can tell, every neighboring county receives. So I just want to highlight the fact, like, we can't fall back on the contractor discussion, because it's, for me, it's a totally separate issue when it comes to that map. And I'm very pleased to hear what Chairman Evans said. I look forward to working with him, because there will be a vote on something. You will see this council at least have a discussion and a vote on changing this policy.
Did you have a question?
Sure.
You have a question?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just want to kind of defend our council's position and attitude toward this.
You don't have to defend anything.
It's been said many times from people in this building that as a city government, we have three functions: streets, trash, and snow. We have street issues, we know that. Big snow problem this time, which led to huge trash problem. You add those up, those are 3 strikes. That's why we're so concerned, and that's why the citizens are so upset. And as it's been mentioned, due to the law of gravity, it comes to us, and now it comes to you. So none of this is personal. This is just, we're doing our jobs. And one thing that might, I think, be helpful, I appreciate all the communication, and I do respect, and I think your comms team is good. One thing that sometimes we're surprised is the lack of communication directed specifically at us.
Yep.
We need to be force-fed. We've all got jobs. We're scrambling. We're trying to squeeze in phone calls from 39,000 constituents in an emergency, and I'm scrambling saying, what the hell is our snow policy? I don't know. I haven't seen it lately. And I would have assumed, I know there was a press conference, but I would have liked to have seen in my inbox, here's the policy, get it out to your people. We've all got our own networks. I could have put it out Tuesday night, would have removed 90% of the concerns and comments. Now, they would have been upset about the policy, we can deal with that, but it was just the uncertainty and the questions that really made us look totally unprepared. So maybe a little improvement on that. Question about I'm pleading my ignorance here. We do 2 12-hour shifts, which leads to excessive overtime, which might be used for contractors. Is there a possibility, and I look at Steve or Mr. Joyce on, is there options for 3 8-hour shifts versus 2 12-hour shifts? Or are we still running into considerable overtime implications?
Thank you, Councilor. Tim Joyce, DPW Deputy Director.
What the fuck?
We don't have an adequate number of staffing to make 3 shifts. We have 2 12s, that's why it is 2 12.
Yeah.
That's the number we have.
If you had the personnel, other than these snow fights, would they be able to be put to use the other 50 weeks of the year? I mean, it's back to this resources question. Because we've been told by the 25th floor, this is not a financial issue. This is not a budget issue. But it sounds like you're telling us we don't have the people. That's a budget issue.
For a extended period of time, we have run 12-hour shifts. For every snow event, and frankly, any other kind of disastrous public safety concern event, we would run a 12-hour shift. Okay. So your question about whether we have enough work to keep them busy the rest of the year, the answer is we adapt because that's what seems most realistic for the number of people we need on an ongoing 365-day year.
Thank you. Finally, I would just say, I would like to see the contractors called out more frequently. And as there are dozens and dozens of contractors the city uses, they all have risk of liability. That is something that could just be contracted for. To me, it's not a reason and not a legitimate basis for not hiring contractors, even though it was listed in the screen. I just don't buy that. That's a legal matter. We cover it. That's what our insurance is for. That's what the legal department's for. And is there a possibility for these contractors to require them to, if you're going to be a contractor of our city, you have to have the capacity to drop salt, and you must meet these performance requirements. You hit a mailbox, you scratch a car, that's on you. Why don't we do that from a legal perspective?
Councilor Boots, that's a good question, and of course, like with all things related to this, you know, we can continue conversations about how to better prepare and utilize the contractors that are available in the city. Now, you just got to keep in mind that we're talking about people being willing to contract with the city for something that may or may not happen in a given year. And so, you know, as we said earlier, when the 6-inch rule was in place for the 5 years leading up to that policy change, there was no contractor call-outs. That means if you're one of those contractors that's working with the city, you're doing so despite the fact that you might not have gotten any work through that contract for several years. And so that's not to say what you're saying is impossible. And, you know, certainly all these discussions are worth investments in staff time and further consideration. But it is a different dynamic than with other city contractors where you're doing business with them every year and you can set certain expectations. So it is a strange kind of marketplace for that work.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys hanging in there and answering our questions.
And I would like to follow up on one of the things that you mentioned, Councilor Boots. I agree, we are all very busy and multitasking things, and one of the things that Zach Adamson understands is being in this role. So he does spoon feed us. He sends us emails with graphics. And at the beginning of the snow fight, he did send us an email, and it actually had a hyperlink. It had very detailed about the snow fight, had the snow policy. You could actually click on it. It would take you directly to it, and it would discuss this actual policy. And it was very detailed. So anytime you get an email from Zach Adamson, I encourage you to read it because it's very informative.
Make sure you check your emails.
Click on it, you can get it straight to your constituents, and it even has graphics, and he'll even say, this is for Facebook, this is for Twitter. He outlines it for you. He does the hard work for you, and it's all right there. So he did do that at the very beginning of this snow fight for us to outline this and communicating this change. Yeah, thank you. So any other, I know.
What was that in the background?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Carlino just looks just makeup bombed.
There's been a lot of comments. I will try to be as brief as possible. It should go without saying, but thank you to all the AFSCME employees. I had the chance to drive that Monday morning everything hit for an hour and a half, which was supposed to be a 45-minute drive, and it was a long hour and a half driving through that snow. So to imagine doing that 12 hours a day, every day, I cannot say thank you enough.
Oh my God, you dumb kid. They're doing their job. They're getting paid for that. They're getting paid for that. You're going somewhere. They're getting paid to be in the truck. And like they're in a big truck where they're going to not, most likely anyway, not going to get hit or hit something. They're not going to slide off the road, most likely.
It's just very hard work. I know.
Hard work being in a truck. Okay.
Gratitude for all 25 counselors, really. Should go without saying, though, over the last 2 weeks, in my 15 months as counselor, or 13 months as counselor, this has been the issue I've heard by far the most about. And again, nothing criticism of the two of you, because these policies predate both of you. But of course, a lot of frustration about how it's all taken place. The thing that I think is most frustrating for people that are in my area is just, as was mentioned, kind of the proximity with Hamilton County occasionally. There are certain HOAs in my district where literally it's, 3/4 Indianapolis residents, 1/4 Fisher residents, and when Fisher is plowing all their streets in the neighborhood the night of, in Indianapolis, people are waiting. It's very frustrating. And I really do appreciate these posts. I didn't realize until this, I saw the PowerPoint, that these posts were communicated, but even still, when they're civically engaged people that, don't remember when things were posted 5 years ago, it's difficult, and I wish there was more communication directly with us. But that being said, I really look forward to working with all 13 of us, the two of you, everyone else in DPW. We have to be a team on this. It's not an us versus you. We have to find a way to work together in the future. There's frustrations we might have, but we have to be a team at the end of the day. And that's not a Democratic Republican thing. It's not a council versus DPW thing. It's not an us versus ASME thing, certainly. It's all of us working together. And I hope we can all work together.
We want to know who messed up, though.
25-0 hooks. All of us know this needs to change. We need to do better in the future, and we want to be a team on this. So I appreciate all of you guys. Appreciate all of you. Let's get together, get something done on this.
Councilor Gibson?
This is unbelievable. This freaking kid. Dude, we want to know what happened, why it happened, and what can we do to fix it? Because obviously, and then the interim office space, basically, he doesn't want to answer any questions, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. That's what has he been on his phone all night?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think there are two phases to a snowstorm or fight, in my opinion. The first phase is to get the city open for business, and I believe that DPW and ASME did a great job there. The city was back open to business on Tuesday. My son goes to IPS. He was back to school on Tuesday. The commerce was open, streets were open, business were open. The city was open for business on Tuesday. So we have to really give the city kudos for operating and getting the city back into operation within less than 24 hours from that storm. So DPW.
There were places that were open on Monday too, and there were places that were closed also, and even on Tuesday they were still closed down. I don't know where you are, rich boy, but over here on the west side, and you even see Carlino mean mugging him. That did not happen. I should have recorded Washington and how bad it was.
ASME did a wonderful job there. I agree with the grades of A there. The second phase is the residential streets. I think the real gap there is that the public has a view from years ago that the side streets would be plowed. And I recognize that we changed the policy in 2020, but ordinary residents don't know that. And they can go to social media. Some of them are fluent enough to do that, and others are not. But I think the real gap is that the public view was that their side street at some point would be plowed, and they were not. And then we had a second snowstorm that came, and that just made neighbors go pretty berserk about it. I think going forward, I hope we'll do a better job of how to inform resident neighbors about whether or not their streets be plowed. Because to be honest with you, when I told neighbors that their streets would not be plowed, they were okay with it. They just want to know whether or not it's going to get plowed or not. Mm-hmm. That was a real question I had was, will my street get plowed? I just said they would not get plowed.
And they were okay with that. They were okay with their tax-paying money not plowing their road. That's unbelievable.
Body language and all that we were talking with the city, they were not going to get plowed. But I think going forward, I think we as a city could do a better job of trying to meet the expectation of residential streets. I think just being straightforward with residentials. This storm, we believe, would be 4 inches. There would be no side streets plowed. I think that we have to be that clear and distinct with our residents. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Sir. Councilor Brum?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
oh boy,
just a couple brief comments, and I know I've already spoken a lot. First, I wanted to say to the comms team, I think they're doing a great job. I'm not saying that any individual comms team member is not doing the work. My problem is with the type of communication and the way it's worded. It's always worded like a press release, like we're celebrating something great, when I think this You could have done a clearer job getting into MS Word, put it on 40 font, bright red, saying your street will not get plowed. Call a contractor if you want. And that would have been frustrating, but less frustrating than much more work that the comms team did, because it buried the lead. It was phrased like, hey, thanks to this new policy, we're able to hit more residential streets in terms of the connectors. And then you can click this map and go into that. Most people aren't going to go into that. I read the whole thing and didn't realize that meant if you're not on a connector, you will not get any help whatsoever in this snow and ice storm. And if I'm missing it, I think most of my constituents are missing it as well. I'm a full-time counselor. And so it just wasn't effective communications to Councilor Gibson's point, the main message is go get help if you need help, because the city's not coming for you. And it's a harsh sounding message, but that's the actuality of what people experienced, and getting it blunt reads a lot better than 1,000 words that don't quite say the same thing, right? And that is the nature of my frustration, why I said I was angry after your presentation, is because, to Councilor Roberts' point, we all want to work together as a team, but when it feels like we're not living in the same reality and not able to just like count the numbers in front of us, when we're preposterously claiming that this is not a budget issue, and then we're supposed to work together and try to find a solution, there is no way you can have only 24 more plows and 7 times as many lane miles unless that's a budget issue. That just flies in the face of reason. Children know this. And so it's insulting to our intelligence and to the people watching on TV's intelligence to claim this isn't a budget issue. That's just ridiculous. When I've explained to people that due to the state road funding formula, we don't have the money to plow streets. People are frustrated, people are upset, but they can accept that. And then they understand, quite frankly, oh, maybe I need to get involved in politics. Whereas right now, based on the comms, like before I talked to them, all they said was, man, screw the mayor, screw this city, I'm going to move out or I'm going to riot. Like, I'm barely exaggerating. I just want you to understand how upset people are before there's pitchforks outside of Lugar Plaza. Seriously.
Why don't you ask those people who they've been voting for, I don't know, the last 5 years, the last 8 years, and what changed? Because we used to have this problem. This road funding formula has been around for a long time, and all the roads were able to get plowed. So what happened? What changed? Maybe you should backtrack a little bit and figure out what's actually going on. And here's the deal, Jesse. People are leaving here because it's just not about the plowed roads. It's about the crime. It's about how they feel safety-wise. It's not just the plowed roads, it's the infrastructure. And it's people like you, socialists, that I would say that, like, I'm proud to be Antifa, that are the main reason why people are leaving Indianapolis.
Any other comments, questions from our colleagues?
Chairwoman Jones, if I may,
Yes,
just,
thank you.
I appreciate that, and I know that there wasn't a question, and I got that. I did just want to say, for clarity, in case, I know what I meant, but obviously, it's been a long presentation, and I want to make sure people are clear on this. I do not want people to come away with this from the idea that I, certainly as the department's chief financial officer, don't think that the department has needs. And there was a hypothetical raised earlier about, like, what if we had hundreds of millions of dollars? Of course that would help. And I apologize if I didn't answer that clearly enough.
You didn't.
In regards
Yeah, you didn't
to
answer
not
it.
a budget issue comment, I was referring specifically to whether in this snowstorm, in this instance, we had the capability to call out private contractors if we deemed that was the best course of action. So that was a specific point to that, and not a holistic, we have no budgetary challenges whatsoever. So I just want to make that point clear.
I appreciate that clarification. And then the one final point I wanted to clarify from my earlier comments is I'm a pro-union guy all day, every day. I'd prefer we never use contractors and we just hire enough union staff that we can always have people on hand working 8-hour shifts.
Don't be
not
Brown
12.
again.
That too is a budget challenge, not anything else. And so when I say we should have called out contractors, that's not out of a desire to get rid of union staff by any means. I also think we should set up policies so you can't park on the streets when snow's happening, like almost every other major city that deals with this problem does. Like, there's a number of different policy changes.
Where are they
going to
park though, huh? Hey, where are they going to park though? If the only thing is available is street parking, where are they going to park?
City's job of clearing the streets easier, and residents will have a role in that. I don't think it has to just be the city does everything, residents do nothing, but I just want to make that clear. My point was to say, I think we have to first say this was a failure, full stop. Then from there, look at what could we do, finding solutions moving forward. And I would like to work as a team on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. First and foremost, from me, since I didn't get a chance to say it, to all the men and women of AFSCME and to all the Department of Public Works staff who have been putting in long hours and taking time away from your family, thank you from us very much for all the long hours and putting yourself in treacherous situations. Thank you very, very much from me. For you both, I want you all to hear me. I was hearing you. I was hearing everything that you were saying. And I did take it to the department, and they did listen. And when you were talking about the presentation, a lot of those questions were coming from the things that I was hearing and gleaning from you. And I wanted to make sure that your questions were answered and that you got some answers for those. And they did not hesitate. When I asked, it was not a hesitation. They absolutely said yes. And so I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart for you coming here. For all you staying late tonight, when I know that you probably have to be back at work bright and early in the morning.
They're
but
probably
thank you
getting
I know
paid
it's
to
a
be
tough
there.
Conversation. I hope that there's more, not that there's more conversations, but I hope that it can continue the dialogue, because I think that there's brilliant minds in this room, and I think my colleagues, you wouldn't be here, our guest too, you wouldn't be here if you didn't care about your constituents, right? I hope our constituents can watch this and know that they can see the passions running high, that we care so deeply. When you're calling us, you're emailing us, you're texting us, as Chairman Evans said, he's trying to get people, he's trying to dig people out and find resources himself. We care so deeply, and that's why it is a long committee night tonight, because we care deeply. And it is worth it, and that's why we signed up to serve. That's why you both are in leadership roles, because you care. And so we hope that we can continue this conversation, we can work together, and we hope that you know that we're here for you, working into budget season. We hope that we can come up with, we hope that you know that you can come to us, and we're here to advocate. As you talked about, Director, that snow preparedness does not happen just in January, February. It happens year-round, and we hope that you can count on us. And we thank you for your time tonight, and I'll take a motion to adjourn, and you all can go home.
Second.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you.
We got like 10 more seconds of this whole thing. But anything happened? No, nothing happened. What an absolute clusterfuck. What an absolute mess right now of this whole thing. All right, I want to show you something real quick. All right, so this is Shoddy, Danley Van Dongen. And it looked like she was some interpretation intern at the Center for Urban Ecology. What the hell is that? An interpretation intern? I don't know. Sounds dumb, though. And then worked for the city right after that, the mayor's office, like she said. Mayor's Action Center, blah, blah, blah. And then we have this office space dipshit. Sam, who is now the interim DPW director, the CFO of DPW. And look, his main role has been what? We got this one, Arizona Joint Legislative Budget Committee. It's all numbers, it's all budget, it's all math. He helped some dude. He was a David Young for Colorado field organizer for 7 months. Yeah, Democrat, which we already know. Cost benefit analysis. So the dude's, his main job is just math shit, all right? He is not leadership material. He's fine when it comes to figuring out budget charts or figuring out how much money we can spend or what's the forecast for our how much money we're actually going to collect. He's fine with that, but leadership-wise, oh my God, he is the worst. Couldn't answer any questions at all. In fact, you might as well just fire him because he's not even that good. Oversight of DPW's financial operations, including budgeting, payroll, procurement, and debt management. At 5-year capital improvement plan. He might be good with that. Personally, he probably isn't even that good at that. And this is what's going to continuously happen while Democrats are in control. This is what have things gotten better? I mean, if there's anything that we could learn off of this, have things gotten better for Indianapolis at all? If not, then why do you keep voting the same way? because these people are part of the administration and they're protecting themselves. They're protecting Hogsett. How long has Hergy been? Hold on, let me find out how long Hergy's been out. All right, so he's been gone since when? December. Okay, so it was like beginning of December. Or is it end of December? I don't know. Whatever it was, like. But if you already have a pretty good idea who's going to be the interim director, right? Hergy probably gave like a month notice, and it was like, hey, I need to show you who's going to be the next guy up. Hey, all right, it's going to be you, Office Space. All right, this is what you need to do, kind of deal. And if you've been with the administration for 2 years, almost 3 years, you would think that you would have a pretty good idea how things are run, especially how to answer a simple fucking question from Paul N.A. or Josh Bain. It was pretty funny, though, watching Andy Nielsen get all mad. He's very unassuming. He's very fragile. He could yell all he wants. He still looks like a bitch. He looks like he's like a $1.50 soaking wet kind of deal. So I don't know. I don't want to stay on here too long. I know if anybody has stayed on here for the, 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours now, congratulations. This is the kind of stuff that I do. Not that I'm tooting my own horn or anything, but also don't forget tomorrow night at 8:00 p.m. Eastern, I will have tomorrow's movie night. I don't know what we're watching. It's usually something from the Indianapolis. I don't know. Let's take a look right now. All right, what are we watching tomorrow, folks? We are going to watch, let's see, special events. Well, what do we want to watch on there? We'll find something. The other one. Oh, here we go. State Aging of Central Indiana. That's what we're going to watch. That's an hour. Or do you want to do the Hoosier History? What we got? We might do Hoosier History, or we're going to do the State of Aging in Central Indiana. That's movie night tomorrow. And there's a bunch of other stuff, too. Braun had a bunch of executive orders, and the black folks are not happy about it. So we're going to check out black social media again, see what they're crying about. We're going to look at a couple of more bills that are going down the pipe now that legislation has happened. My shitbag state rep did not show up for work at all. He is 0-3 right now for showing up to work. I heard he's in South America. Who could say, though? What's he doing down there when he should be doing his fucking job? But because of dipshits in Garfield Park and Fletcher Place are like, oh, no, we just need a Democrat. We don't want somebody who actually shows up to community meetings, who can actually get a hold of, who doesn't leave the country for whatever reason. That kind of stuff. So, so on and so forth. But that's all I got so far. Don't forget to check out Indy Reporter on Twitter. Don't forget to check out Indy Reporter on Twitter. Yeah, we're going to talk about this whole Diego thing, too. Yeah, that'd actually be the very first thing that we talk about is this whole Diego situation. Because, man, what a clusterfuck that has turned into. So damn funny. So damn funny. Some of you already know, and some of you don't.